Chapter 1297. The new consciousness of the water fairy was also stunned, thinking, I'm still alive. After another sprint, Han Fei's soul was shattered again. However, Han Fei had already reached the big seal array. This time, his soul seemed to return a little slower. When Han Fei came back to his senses, he found that the vines covered in frost seemed to be trying to separate the white mist that he had turned into. Han Fei found that every time the white mist was shattered, it would take longer for his soul to wake up again. So if he was killed infinitely, the Gemini divine technique might collapse, and his soul would be reduced by more than half. He could barely survive and forge the universe. And this newly born consciousness might have underestimated Han Fei. The power of the blue sea smoothie slowed the vines that stretched over by half a beat, which delayed her a little time. After all, she was forcibly using the body of the water fairy. Seeing that he was really about to be separated, Han Fei thought quickly, how can I gather my mist bodies together? Suddenly, Han Fei had an idea and secretly activated the Dao seed. I can ignore space. Han Fei's eyes focused, and he saw his white mist bodies coming out from all directions. Some even ran out from the roots of plants. When the white mist gathered, the new consciousness was stunned again. What the hell is this? However, this time, Han Fei didn't dare to be unscrupulous. This was too fucking difficult. In just 2 seconds, he had been killed twice. If he hadn't been prepared and thrown Little Black's body in to forge the universe, he would have been dead at this moment. Even the old turtle was scared out of his wits. This was too fucking scary. An intermediate explorer facing a king, he wouldn't know how to fight this battle even if he had 10 turtle heads. Thankfully, Han Fei was smart enough to discover that his Dao could realize some simple things, such as increasing his strength and ignoring space, which were not too difficult to do. At the moment when the white mist body was reunited, Han Fei immediately realized that if this new consciousness could block space, it would be a little difficult for him. However, after 2 life and death experiences, Han Fei finally came to the big seal array. If one wanted to find the water immortal's true body among the millions of white lotuses, it would be impossible to do so without some ability. If the water fairy hadn't told him and he didn't have Little White's ability, he probably wouldn't have been able to find it. At this moment, Han Fei saw a white lotus the size of a palm that was in full bloom with a pale green aura flowing around it. At a glance, Han Fei found that it was not a kind of array but a simple seal power that had been repeatedly superimposed on it. That's right. This newly born consciousness had never left the Yao Sealing Pagoda. How could she know any array formation? Even the water immortal himself wasn't proficient in arrays. How could this new consciousness know arrays? Seeing that it was just a simple seal power, Han Fei suddenly grinned. Taking advantage of the third spiritual attack, he quickly counterattacked. Stellar transposition. However, this time, he was no longer teleporting himself, but teleporting the space not far away in front of him. In fact, the stellar transposition could not only teleport himself, but it could also teleport the space not far away from him. Even if the power of the seal was extremely strong, what use would it be if it was sealed in the wrong place? At the moment when the seal power was teleported, the water immortal's voice sounded again. Bastard, you're just a mid-level venerable. How dare you try to occupy my body? You're courting death. In an instant, the void exploded. Ah! Han Fei heard a scream and the space within 100 kilometers seemed to collapse. Following that, a large number of dark blue soul bodies appeared. Spare me. The water immortal had lived for tens of thousands of years. How could she spare an outsider who wanted to occupy her body? Even if she didn't want this body, it couldn't be taken away by others. Han Fei felt that in the space dozens of kilometers away, there was a sizzling sound as if something was being crushed. Then, a large number of ownerless souls appeared. The water immortal said, Little Wang Han, was your soul injured just now? Try swallowing these ownerless souls. Han Fei sensed that his soul was indeed injured, but it seemed to be less than 20% damaged. And it could be repaired. So, it was not a big problem. At this moment, seeing so many ownerless souls in front of him, how could Han Fei bear it? Han Fei said, Master, has the new consciousness died? The water immortal said, this time, I made a mistake. I didn't expect to be tricked by a new soul. Don't worry, I've killed her. As for you, even I thought it was too late to save you. I didn't expect that you could survive in such a situation. The water immortal's voice was obviously trembling. He didn't know if it was because he was scared, or because he was afraid. Han Fei quickly breathed a sigh of relief. I was scared to death. I thought I was going to die just now. Wait, let me take a mouthful of ownerless souls to calm myself down. Han Fei still didn't release the black fog. God knew if there would be any accidents. Han Fei's way to collect the ownerless souls was also very simple, which was to use the soul-splitting technique. He split out dozens of his divine souls and fused them into the ownerless souls, refining them before retrieving them. After half an hour, Han Fei had only swallowed about 1/3 of the ownerless souls, but he already felt that his soul was greatly strengthened. The water immortal said, Okay, I know you still have part of your original body. I'm very sure that the new consciousness has died. You can come out now. The old turtle said, I didn't feel any threat either. Han Fei slowly breathed a sigh of relief. In Forge the Universe, the black fog appeared. However, little Fatty was still lying in Forge the Universe. That was Han Fei's last insurance. No matter what, he had to keep it. When Han Fei deactivated the Gemini Divine Technique, the Water Immortal said in surprise, this spiritual beast is really rare. It's even connected with vitality. Han Fei said, Master, do you want to feel your original body? I'll eat this ownerless soul first. The Water Immortal asked, You can still eat? The old turtle also said, Boy, how can you still eat? However, Han Fei responded with a smile, I have a painting. It's very extraordinary and can help me digest it. With that, more blue souls were split by Han Fei. Another half an hour later, these ownerless souls were finally devoured by Han Fei. Another 2 hours later, Han Fei quickly memorized the God-scaring painting. At this moment, 700 pieces had been uncovered and he was still rapidly memorizing them. Han Fei didn't expect that a venerable level ownerless soul could have such a great effect. It could help him memorize such a huge amount of God-scaring painting, which was really extraordinary. It was different from the epiphany in the demon-suppressing tower a few days ago. On that day, after the epiphany, Han Fei didn't have time to practice the God-scaring painting. But at this moment, Han Fei deliberately cultivated it. After another 3 hours, the God-scaring painting was completely memorized, and he had memorized 726 pieces. It seemed that Han Fei had reached the limit of his memory. In Han Fei's eyes, information emerged. Owner Han Fei, level greater than 74, Junior Explorer, Spiritual Energy, 180,000/180,000, Spiritual Power, 29012/29012, Perception Range greater than 3,600 kilometers, Law Enforcer, Invincible Power greater than 348 waves, First Spiritual Heritage, Unknown, Second Spiritual Heritage, Unawakened, First Spiritual Beast, Twin Yin-Yang Spirit Swallowing Fish, level 61, Second Spiritual Beast Unawakened Main Art Sky Stealing Technique, level 6 of Void Fishing, Venerable level, Divine Quality. Seeing this scene, Han Fei was shocked. His spiritual power had increased by nearly 4,000 points. After the last epiphany, Han Fei's spiritual power only increased by 2,000 points when he became an intermediate explorer. However, after absorbing the new consciousness of an intermediate venerable, it had grown so much. As for the range of perception, Han Fei was not too surprised. After all, the memory effect of the God-scaring painting was obvious. It would be strange if his spiritual power didn't grow much. Even so, Han Fei was still not satisfied. Han Fei took a deep breath. It seemed that this trip to the gates of hell was worth it. Han Fei's soul power skyrocketed, which made the old turtle very excited. He thought to himself, this kid is too amazing. However, What surprised the old turtle more was not the power of the soul, but the means that Han Fei used to forcibly break the king's body and the will of a venerable. That could only be a means of Tao. Otherwise, he couldn't figure out how Han Fei could resist such a strong enemy and survive. Seeing that Han Fei had woken up, the water fairy said in a relaxed tone, "How is it? Little Wang Han, how about the ownerless soul of a venerable?" Fortunately, this new consciousness has always been suppressed at the bottom of this tower. Otherwise, this ownerless soul wouldn't be so pure. Han Fei looked satisfied as if he had had a good meal, but he asked, "Master, what about Bai Suzhen? This new consciousness shouldn't be completely dead. Part of her is still in Bai Suzhen's body." The water fairy's voice was light. "It doesn't matter. Most of its power has been destroyed by you just now, and the remaining bit has been nourished by the snake spirit for hundreds of years. The price is quite high. But since she helped me create a reincarnation, it's not bad. It saved me a lot of trouble. Otherwise, I would have to find a way to be reborn myself." Hearing this, Han Fei immediately breathed a sigh of relief and rubbed his hands. "Master, you've been reborn. What about your original body? Don't give birth to a new consciousness. I can't stand that." The third update. Please vote. I haven't updated recently. I've been very busy recently, very busy. I even feel that keeping updating is my limit. Please don't rush me. End of this chapter. Chapter 1298. Han Fei was still scared. Luckily, he had a lot of means just now. Otherwise, he would have been dead. However, the soul strength of the newly born consciousness was only that of an intermediate venerable. If it were a king, Han Fei didn't think he would have a chance to struggle at all. Although he didn't have a head-on battle with a venerable, Han Fei was shocked by the strength of a venerable. This was only the soul of a mid-rank Exalt Realm expert, yet it had killed him twice in 2 breaths of time. What would he do if a true mid-rank Exalt Realm expert was standing in front of him? Even if he had all kinds of means, he wouldn't be able to survive. At this moment, Han Fei felt that he was still too weak to participate in a battle at the venerable level. Besides, Han Fei was deeply aware of the terrifying gap between the Explorer realm and the Venerable realm. In any case, he had exerted all his strength just now. Even if he wasn't a half-venerable, he was at least a peak-level explorer. However, in front of the power of a venerable, he was still a piece of cake. At this moment, since the water fairy had dealt with the newly born soul and didn't want her body, wouldn't this great benefit belong to him? Then wouldn't this great benefit belong to him? Although Han Fei didn't know how to use it, the body of a king and the terrifying demonic plants would definitely be of great use to him. The water fairy said, "My body is useless to me. However, my body is alive. With your current strength, you can't kill me even if I let you. However, there are 3 ways to transmit the power of my body to you." Han Fei immediately perked up. What are the 3 ways? In front of Han Fei, a phantom slowly condensed. It was none other than the water fairy. The water fairy said, "The first option is for you to cultivate on this trip. I'll slowly infuse my main body's life force and power into your body, cleansing your flesh, meridians, and bones. Using the king's power to cleanse your body for 10 years will push your spiritual meridians to a level beyond that of a mortal meridian, surpassing the so-called rank 9 spiritual meridian. At the same time, your strength will at least reach the level of a half-venerable. You seem to have comprehended the Great Way, so when you go out, it shouldn't be a problem for you to become a venerable." Han Fei immediately shook his head. "Master, I am no longer a mortal." "Huh?" The water fairy was slightly stunned. "You are no longer a mortal?" Han Fei said, "It's complicated. In any case, it's just that my meridians have been reconstructed and are no longer ordinary meridians. I don't even know what kind of meridians I have now. Therefore, the first method should not be suitable for me. Also, I have to return to my territory in 2 years. There's a great war waiting for me there." The water deity muttered, "The second method is to use all the power of my main body to form a lotus seed and many lotus seeds. The lotus throne could block all attacks below the king level. However, it consumed a lot of spiritual energy and energy. However, it shouldn't be a big problem for you. The lotus seed can help you break through to the next level, allowing you to improve rapidly in a short period of time. However, it would probably take at least 10 years to mature these 9 lotus seeds. The remaining main body will instinctively seek to survive, and I can't do anything about it for now. When Han Fei heard about the lotus throne that could block all attacks below the king level, he was shocked. If he brought this lotus back to the yin-yang heaven, wouldn't he be invincible? However, he didn't have 10 years to wait for a few lotus seeds. Although he knew that those lotus seeds would definitely have a heaven-defying effect, he didn't have 10 years. However, even if he didn't have the lotus seeds, he still had the lotus throne. If he returned to the yin-yang heaven with the lotus throne, he would have the capital to fight the 1,000-star city. The old turtle's voice also sounded in Han Fei's body. This method is very good. It can save your life and improve your strength extremely quickly. It's just 10 years. It takes 100 years for me to take a nap. The old turtle felt that the water deity was already very kind as a teacher. This was a fucking great opportunity. Han Fei had chosen this opportunity, which meant that no one below the king realm could hurt him. Han Fei quickly came back to himself and continued to look at the water deity. Master, what's the third method? The water deity hesitated for a moment. My suggestion is the second one. Because the third option has both advantages and disadvantages, and it will even consume your strength in a short period of time. Han Fei couldn't help but wonder, what's the reason? Han Fei thought to himself, why would the body of a king weaken my strength? Shouldn't it be like adding wings to a tiger? Isn't it a great opportunity? The water deity said, Little Wang Han, you should know that I have the death-seeking technique. My body is a lotus, which can be remolded and created a new body. The new body has no soul to control it. You can split part of your soul, put it in, and create an incarnation for yourself. Wow! Han Fei exclaimed, an incarnation. This was different from the Gemini divine technique. The Gemini divine technique was essentially still one of him. However, these avatars were actually 2 of him. The water deity said, don't be so optimistic. Although you have an incarnation, if you want to control the new body, you need to split a lot of your soul. You may need half of your current soul power. Only in this way can the strength of this incarnation reach a balance with yours. Half. Han Fei was dumbfounded. Isn't this price a bit too high? He was just feeling complacent, feeling that the strength of his soul had skyrocketed and was already extraordinary. Who would have thought that this incarnation would directly take away half of his divine soul? However, Han Fei was still very tempted. He could swallow other people's vitality and steal other people's souls. As long as he fought frequently enough and killed enough opponents, although he couldn't make up for it completely, he could definitely make up for it a lot. Besides, he hadn't mastered the God-scaring painting yet. If he spent some time visualizing and cultivating the God-scaring painting, if he could absorb the ownerless soul of a venerable, it wouldn't be a problem to choose an incarnation. Han Fei said, Master, what are the benefits of an incarnation? The water deity said, in the short term, there are actually no benefits. However, an incarnation can cultivate at the same time as you. As an independent individual, it can cultivate one Tao alone. If you want to fuse it in the future, it can also be possible. At that time, your combat power will be doubled. Han Fei quickly asked, can I still separate them after the fusion? The water deity paused for a moment. No. After you choose to fuse them, your strength will soar, and you may even get 2 Daos. But since they have fused, they can't be separated, so there is no so-called incarnation. Han Fei asked, are there any other benefits? The water deity said, if you choose this path, you can let your incarnation cultivate in this tower. Although I can make my original body give birth to a new one, it doesn't mean that my original body will die. Your incarnation can constantly absorb the power of my original body to cultivate. The premise is that no one notices it. Otherwise, if someone notices that my strength has been greatly reduced, it will be useless. Han Fei said, there are kings in the Baibei royal city, so this path may not work. My incarnation can't stay in the demon ceiling tower. However, can the incarnation and the original body communicate at will? The old turtle added, to put it bluntly, there are two of you. However, you have to remember, once your soul is split, the soul of your original body and the soul of your incarnation may not be connected. Although you are in an active position, you will only perceive each other when you are close to each other. If you are too far away, you may not know what you are doing. Han Fei was a little stunned. What are you talking about? I don't know what I am doing. Speaking of which, it seems quite strange. Han Fei pondered for a moment. Generally speaking, he had temporarily separated himself. When his original body and the incarnation fuse, his strength will instantly increase a lot. Han Fei thought, once I return to the yin-yang heaven, I will definitely be in trouble. Why don't I leave some backup plans in the Shuemu heaven? Han Fei suddenly said, Master, if my original body dies, will my incarnation also die? The water deity shook her head. Of course not. The incarnation is also your original body, but when you split your soul, there is a primary and secondary soul. Once your original soul dies, the soul on the side of the incarnation will naturally become your original soul. And this incarnation will also become your original body. Han Fei immediately raised his eyelids. I choose the third one. As the saying goes, if you don't think far ahead, you will have immediate worries. From a long-term perspective, the benefits of the incarnation were definitely above the lotus seat and lotus seed. If two of him cultivated, he could fuse them in the end. It was equivalent to having twice the time of others. How could there be such a good thing in the world? The water deity said, Little Wang Han, do you have enough soul power? Han Fei asked, Master, can you still catch a venerable realm creature and give me some ownerless souls? The water deity couldn't help but roll his eyes. Do you think I'm omnipotent? You should know the space barrier in this tower. Now, I've given up my original body. Maybe I can cross the barrier and kill a venerable realm creature, but I can't bring it back. Besides, once I make a big noise, someone outside will definitely notice. Han Fei asked, what if you take me with you? As soon as he said this, the water deity looked at Han Fei as if he were a fool, thinking, if you stay here, I can keep you safe. Why don't you try other floors? The old turtle said, why are you in such a hurry? It's not a big deal. Just kill more people. One day, you will be able to make up for it. Han Fei's face suddenly darkened. What are you talking about? If I have a fucking chance to make up for it, wouldn't it be better? The water deity said, can you make up for it if I give you a lot of ignorant souls? Han Fei nodded quickly. Yes. Han Fei knew for sure. After all, his soul was split off by himself, just like a jar. Half of the water was poured out, but the volume didn't change. As long as he could make up for the other half of the water, it would be the same. The water deity said, Bai Suzhen should be able to get some new consciousnesses. If you cut off that consciousness, there should be some ownerless souls for you. Han Fei's eyes lit up. That's great. First update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1299. In fact, Han Fei knew very well that if he chose the second method, he would be almost immortal as long as he was a king. However, that kind of method also lacked experience, and it gave off a feeling of winning while lying down. Sometimes, winning without doing anything was not necessarily a good thing. With the Lotus Throne, at most, he wouldn't be afraid of being beaten up when fighting with others. But he had never been afraid of others at the same level. As for those who could beat him, even if he had a lotus seat, he would still be beaten up. After Han Fei firmly chose the path of an incarnation, a consciousness suddenly asked, Master, since you can rebuild a new body, why don't you recultivate with a new body? The water fairy said, I was going to recultivate, but not by rebuilding my body, but by starting a new life. I will turn into a seed, grow again, and blossom. In Han Fei's heart, the old turtle's voice praised leisurely, "What great courage! Break and rebuild. This is the great ambition to fight again and walk on the path of immortality." Han Fei was slightly stunned for a while. Just from the water deity's words, one could tell that it required a lot of courage and boldness. He didn't even want his king's body anymore. Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "What about Bai Suzhen?" The water fairy said, "Like you, after I purify the wisp of new consciousness in her body, she will still be my reincarnation. But different from your incarnation, she now has her own independent will. When she becomes stronger and stronger, she will eventually return." Hearing this, Han Fei was relieved. After all, no matter what, Bai Suzhen was the reincarnation of the water fairy, so he didn't help her wrong. However, Bai Suzhen was a trap set by the new consciousness, which intended to be reborn in a body. However, she didn't expect the water fairy to exist. Otherwise, he might really be attacked by the newly born consciousness. The water fairy said, "Since you said you are pressed for time, don't delay. By the way, if you split your soul, can you still suppress the ferocious creature in your body?" Huh? Han Fei's eyes widened, and the old turtle's heart skipped a beat. Was he seen through? The water fairy chuckled. "It's nothing. My body was almost in a half-dead state, so my soul was exceptionally strong. Last time, when I met you, I already had a feeling. This time, I'm even more certain that there's an old monster inside your body." Han Fei shrugged. "It's okay. Master, you should know that I have a special soul treasure. The old turtle is now not being suppressed by my own soul, but by my soul-type artifact." Water deity said lightly, "That's good. I was afraid that you wouldn't be able to suppress him. However, it knows all your secrets. Don't give it a chance to come out easily in the future." The old turtle immediately roared, "How can I be such a despicable turtle? I have my own path of the great Tao." Han Fei said angrily, "Old Yuan, that's enough. Even my teacher couldn't hide it from you. How dare you call yourself an emperor? What a disgrace to the title of emperor." The old turtle, water fairy, didn't know who old turtle was, but she knew Han Fei. A person who could cross the river of time back and forth, and a person who had a terrifying master behind him, would never allow a terrifying master to hide in his body. Therefore, since the master was already in Han Fei's body, he was probably suppressed. Sure enough, as expected, wasn't it already being suppressed? With Wang Han's personality, it was hard to say. However, with Han Fei's personality, he shouldn't be easily fooled by that creature. Water Fairy said, "Wait for 3 to 5 days. I need to mobilize the power of my body." 5 days later. In just 5 days, Water Fairy's body shrank at least twice as much. However, under the cover of one of the white lotuses, a lotus seed appeared, and lotus roots grew out. Han Fei had already guessed it. "So, my external incarnation is made of lotus roots?" And in Han Fei's eyes, relevant information appeared. Name: a mixed essence lotus. Introduction: the king's domain lotus demon used a huge amount of vitality and chaotic energy to accelerate the growth of your primordial chaos lotus. It has the miraculous effect of being immune to all evils, immune to poison, and able to subdue souls. It can be used to refine an external incarnation. Level: a king level. Quality: ultra quality. Contains chaotic energy. Effect: if eaten directly, anyone below the half-king level will explode and die. Those above the half-king level can be immune to all evil, immune to poison, and able to capture souls. When he saw the message, Han Fei almost drooled. This is really fucking strong. He had never thought that he would become like Neza. Han Fei even wondered if Neza's lotus root body was better than his. I don't think so. This is a real king's body, which is almost the same as an immortal's body. At this moment, Han Fei suddenly thought of something. Since the external incarnation is not a human body, why should I stick to the human form? Han Fei immediately said, "Master, can you give me 3 heads and 6 arms? Water Fairy?" Han Fei said, "Master, I think since I don't stick to the human form, I should maximize my combat power. I'm good at too many combat skills, and I can't use all of them with 2 hands. If I have 3 heads and 6 arms, I think I can beat countless people at once. Water Fairy said, I'll have a try. Han Fei said again, I mean when I need 3 heads and 6 arms, I'll have 3 heads and 6 arms. When I don't need them, I'll still have 1 head and 2 arms. Water Fairy said grumpily, you're asking for too much. Don't take it for granted. Another 3 days passed. Han Fei saw a lotus root body appear at the bottom of the water. His body and appearance were based on Wang Han's, which made Han Fei quite sigh. On the ears of the lotus root body, there were 2 lotus seed earrings. Han Fei couldn't help but feel disgusted. Master, I'm a boy. It's not appropriate for me to wear earrings, is it? Water Fairy said grumpily, what do you know? Those are your other 2 heads. Han Fei. Han Fei felt that he might have taken it for granted. Nez's martial arts of 3 heads and 6 arms could actually be found. It wasn't a particularly profound combat skill. However, the 3 heads and 6 arms technique was different from having 3 heads and 6 arms in real body. It was better to have 3 heads and 6 arms in real body. Otherwise, the combat skill could only be used as a secret method, and there was always a time limit. Han Fei had already planned to use the Universe Ring, the Red Armillary Sash, the Wind Fire Wheels, the Fire-Tipped Spear, the 9 Dragons Divine Fire Shield, the Golden Brick, and other divine weapons for his external incarnation. Tisk, tisk. Just thinking about this, Han Fei felt that he would be fascinated by his own charm. When his external incarnation appeared, it would definitely shock the world. He would enter the yin-yang heaven without any resistance. In the past few days, both the old turtle and Water Fairy felt that Han Fei was weird. From time to time, he would smirk. Who knew what he was looking forward to? According to their logic, Han Fei was a strong master who had entered the Tao. After comprehending the Tao, it was only a matter of time before he became a venerable. Why did he always show his emotions? But Han Fei didn't care. Except for losing half of his soul, he didn't suffer any loss. Besides, his soul could be replenished. However, how much luck would it take to meet a strong external incarnation? Water Fairy shouted, Little Wang Han, listen to my command. Split your soul. Begin. Han Fei's face froze, and his soul seemed to be torn apart. Large patches of dark blue divine souls were like smoke coming out of his body. Seeing this scene, Water Immortal was instantly shocked. Your godly soul power is so strong. After all, he was a king-level master. The Water Fairy could naturally tell the strength of Han Fei's soul power at a glance. Now, the amount of soul that Han Fei had split out was probably equal to all the soul power of an ordinary Tao-seeking state master. Han Fei's face was twisted, and he continued to separate. It's not done yet. Wait a little longer. At this time, Han Fei's soul had been separated, and he no longer felt the tearing pain at the beginning. However, Han Fei still felt dizzy when he separated too much of his soul. The old turtle didn't know that Han Fei's soul power was so strong. At this moment, seeing the endless separation, he couldn't help but sigh in his heart. What a monster! How long has this kid been cultivating? How can he have such a strong soul power? After half of his soul was separated, Han Fei felt his body was floating, and his face became extremely pale. It took him a long time to stabilize his body. Water Deity took a deep look at Han Fei. She wrapped a ball of green light around Han Fei's divine soul and injected it into the lotus root's body. She said, Little Wang Han, your divine soul power has reached the semi-venerable level? Han Fei grinned with difficulty. I don't know how strong the soul power of the semi-venerable level is. Water Fairy said helplessly, then you should recover first. You need time to adapt to the sudden loss of such a soul. Your external incarnation needs to be refined. Han Fei saw that after his soul was submerged into the body of the lotus root, there seemed to be a strange and enormous power gathering from all directions. That kind of power appeared to be a faint gray color. Han Fei's heart skipped a beat. For some reason, he felt that he also wanted that power. Han Fei couldn't help asking, "Master, what is this power?" Water Fairy said, "Chaotic Qi." Chapter 1300. When the Life Queen gave him the immeasurable fruit, it also contained a wisp of chaotic energy. But now, Han Fei didn't know how much chaotic energy had poured into his external incarnation. Now, the part of Han Fei's soul that was separated was being led by the Water Fairy. It was as if some kind of power was pushing him into a soft cotton candy, making him feel like he was being wrapped up. Han Fei didn't know until this moment that this was to make his soul more suitable for this new body. And the chaotic energy, like the flame used for refining, was the process of refining the embryo into a finished product. Because at this moment, his soul was separated. Half of his soul had entered the lotus root body. Therefore, this part of his soul was idle, but it couldn't move and could only watch. It felt as if he was pressed on a bed covered with marshmallows and someone was massaging him. Therefore, Han Fei's soul didn't have to pay attention to him all the time. Because within a short distance, his soul was connected. So, while consolidating his soul power, Han Fei looked at his own data. At this moment, all of his parameters had declined significantly. Owner Han Fei, level greater than 74, Intermediate Explorer, Spiritual Energy 150,000, Spiritual Power 14506, 14506, Perception Range greater than 1800 km, Law Enforcer, Invincible Power greater than 292 waves, First Spiritual Heritage Unknown, Second Spiritual Heritage, Unawakened, First Spiritual Beast Twin Yin-Yang Spirit Swallowing Fish, Level 61, Second Spiritual Beast Unawakened Main Art Avoid Fishing, Level 6, Sky Stealing Technique, Venerable Level, Divine Quality. In fact, this result was even better than Han Fei expected. Han Fei pondered. After all, he had reached a higher height. If there were no accidents, he could easily return to his original realm. This kind of return, except for absorbing the ownerless soul, didn't require any epiphany. Now, his spiritual power and range of perception had been reduced by half, but the other things that had been reduced were not much. Of course, seeing that his perception range was 1800 kilometers, Han Fei was relieved. After all, before his epiphany, his perception range was only more than 300 kilometers longer than it was now. Now, after splitting half of his soul power, Han Fei was already very surprised that his perception range was still 1800 kilometers. However, even though he had lost half of his divine soul, the range he could explore was about the same as before. This also explained another problem: the current perception of his divine soul was definitely not as secretive as before. In the past, if he had used soul manipulation to spy on others and eavesdrop on their conversation, others might not have been able to detect it at all. But now, if he were to do so again, there was a high possibility that he would be discovered by others. The reason why his perception range was still so large might be because he had previously cultivated the God-scaring painting. At this moment, the weakening of his soul made Han Fei clearly realize the importance of the soul. After all, the strength of one's soul directly affected the amount of spiritual energy stored, and even weakened one's strength by more than 50 waves. Han Fei asked, "Old Yuan, how can the weakening of the soul also weaken the power?" The old turtle replied lazily, "It's only temporary." The divine soul was an extremely mysterious thing that could fully utilize the potential of one's body. It was just like a person in a normal state and a person in a weakened state. One's mental state was good, while the other was bad. Their strength also varied according to their states. Naturally, there was a difference in strength. When your divine soul is restored, it will naturally be fine. The example given by the old turtle was quite vivid. After hearing this explanation, Han Fei understood. The decline of all his attributes was caused by the weakness of his divine soul. In this case, he had to find a way to quickly restore his divine soul and return to his previous strength as soon as possible. That way, he would be able to handle a place like the Baibei royal city with ease. However, even if he was in a weakened state, he was actually extremely strong, not something that the Fish Dragon King and the others could compare to. Even if he encountered Baisuzhen again, he wouldn't be any weaker. After all, his strength was not weak at all. With such strength, Han Fei felt that it shouldn't be a problem for him to rank in the top 3 on the heavenly talent list of the Baibei royal city. Thinking of this, Han Fei was immediately relieved. 1 day. 2 days. 3 days. Halfway through the 3rd day, Han Fei suddenly felt that he was alive. That feeling was very strange. He was cultivating, but he felt that he was suddenly alive. Because of the connection of the soul, Han Fei perceived his current self from another place. Han Fei, who was cultivating, suddenly opened his eyes and looked at his lotus root body. Water deity roared, "Little Wang Han, give me half of your essence blood." Han Fei dared not waste any time. He flipped his hand and Snowmorn appeared. With a "chila" sound, he sliced open a wound on his wrist, and golden blood sprayed out rapidly. Compared to his divine soul, essence blood was not a big deal. He could make up for it with spiritual fruits. He didn't even have a chance to weaken himself. Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "Master, do you still need essence blood? I can give it all to you. I can still regenerate." Water deity looked at Han Fei's golden blood in a daze. Golden blood. Why does it feel like the level of life is beyond the range of human beings? However, water deity immediately came back to herself and said, "No, I need to let your external incarnation adapt to it and let it generate other essence blood." When all the essence blood was absorbed into the external incarnation slowly opened its eyes. Han Fei's lips curled. "Master, is this the external incarnation?" Water deity seemed to be weakened. "Feel it yourself. This external incarnation shouldn't be as strong as your current body. However, if one were to say that he was weak, he shouldn't be that weak. You can let it cultivate on its own and try another path." The two Han Feis looked at each other. The external incarnation looked at its head, but no information popped up. It seemed that the body had been changed without the protection of the demon purification pot. Since the demon purification pot was gone, it couldn't sense the old turtle either. Han Fei tentatively said, "Old turtle, old turtle, old turtle." Seeing that no one responded, Han Fei was relieved. It seemed that the external incarnation was much worse than the external incarnation in terms of treasures. Water deity said, "Little Wang Han, you have to find a way out now. The power of my external incarnation has been greatly weakened. Almost half of my power has been used to build this external incarnation for you. It has fallen from the king realm to the half-king realm. If an expert investigates, I'm afraid that there will be a conflict." Han Fei raised his eyebrows. In order to build an external incarnation for himself, water deity consumed so much power. Han Fei didn't dare to hesitate. With a thought, he tried to put the external incarnation into Forge the Universe. However, a massive amount of spiritual spring disappeared in Forge the Universe again. The external incarnation trembled slightly and couldn't go in immediately. Horrified, Han Fei quickly stopped. "Forge the Universe doesn't recognize me? External incarnation." Han Fei didn't pursue it. With a thought, the illusion of mountains and rivers appeared. Since it was not easy to enter Forge the Universe, he would enter the sea-quelling painting. After a while, Han Fei said, "Master, I don't know how to get out." Water deity said, "I've given up my cultivation as a king. How can I not get out of a few seals? However, if I break the seals by force, I may attract the attention of experts. If I transform into a new seed now and send you out, it's not impossible for you to be discovered. Let me think of a foolproof plan." Hearing water deity's words, Han Fei blinked and said, "Master, can I destroy this demon sealing tower?" Water deity was stunned for a moment. "What nonsense are you talking about? There are many powerful creatures suppressed in this tower. Once they are released, the entire sea area may be plunged into misery and suffering." Han Fei scratched his head and said, "Master, there's one thing I forgot to tell you. Although we are not in the Sea Demon King City now, this place should be very close to the Sea Demon King City. It is the trial ground of the Sea Demon King City. Sea Demon King City. Water deity was stunned for a moment. Why am I in the Sea Demon King City? Han Fei shrugged. I don't know. Perhaps the Yao Ceiling Pagoda exists to suppress you. Water deity asked doubtfully, is it really okay to release these powerful creatures? Han Fei grinned and said, Master, including my junior sister and your disciple, there are now 3 kings in this territory. Water deity's eyes narrowed slightly. 3 kings. In that case, we can give it a try. However, this demon ceiling tower, if I had my previous strength, I might be able to break it. Now, I'm afraid it will be a little difficult. In Han Fei's heart, the old turtle said, why should we break it? All he had to do was release those great demons. Then, throw this tower into the wall of death. It's best to smash a hole in it. Then release some creatures. Don't you know how to destroy it? Shocked by the old turtle's words, Han Fei directly repeated the old turtle's words to the water fairy. If the demon ceiling tower was in chaos, wouldn't the White Shell King City be in chaos? If the White Shell King City was in chaos, wouldn't the Shui Mu heaven be relaxed? Water deity was still a little conservative after all. However, the old turtle and Han Fei were both lawless people. One was proud of being a demon, and the other was purely a troublemaker who wanted to see the world in chaos. The two of them hoped that the demon ceiling tower would collapse. Only in this way could they win in the chaos. On the 6th floor of the demon ceiling tower, Zhang Yao was fighting fiercely. Even as an undead creature, he couldn't bear the intensity of the battle here. It had been almost 20 days since he entered the Dao, but he still hadn't found a chance to lower his realm. At this moment, he was fighting a big crab. The terrifying power shattered the void. All of a sudden, a lotus throne appeared out of nowhere in the dark void. It had appeared on the 6th floor. And on the lotus throne, who else could it be but Han Fei? Han Fei shouted, Senior, stand where you are and don't move. Hearing this, Zhang Yao didn't dare to move. He didn't know what kind of trick Han Fei was playing. He didn't know where Han Fei came from. He saw a phantom of mountains and rivers directly enveloping him. In the next moment, Zhang Yao disappeared in place. And the big crab still wanted to clamp the void. However, the lotus throne turned and the giant pincers collapsed, scaring the crab away. Bam! Bam! The void continued to shatter. With 2 more bangs, the space barrier broke again. On the 4th floor of the demon ceiling tower, in the 800-kilometer quicksand land, Bai Suzhen clapped her hands, guarding the weak snake demon who was fighting with 6 big dragons. Bai Suzhen, the new consciousness of water deity, had to protect this snake demon. After all, in terms of karma and the tribulation of mental demons, she had to protect this nominal mother. Otherwise, it was really unnecessary to make trouble for the great Dao. Suddenly, the void cracked, and Bai Suzhen couldn't help but look up. However, when she looked up, she saw Bai Suzhen's expression changed and she exclaimed, Impossible. Chapter 1301. In Bai Suzhen's view, Han Fei's strength was only at the intermediate Dao-seeking level. With such strength, anyone below the 4th floor would basically die. How could he survive? However, when she saw the divine lotus throne, she was immediately horrified. Wasn't that existence sealed by her soul? How could she break through the seal? This divine lotus throne was definitely not something that could be controlled by her main soul. Her main soul wasn't that strong either. Therefore, that existence must have woken up and regained control of her body. Therefore, the consciousness at the bottom of Bai Suzhen's heart was very frightened at this moment. Could it be that her main divine soul had been destroyed? She finally separated and crossed layers of barriers to come here. She had long lost contact with her main soul. Unexpectedly, she miscalculated. The illusion of mountains and rivers descended and directly enveloped the snake monster. Before the snake monster had a chance to react, Han Fei had taken her into the sea quelling painting. And the 6 big dragons, feeling the horror of the divine lotus throne, had already fled. It could even be said that Han Fei coming through the void on the divine lotus throne was enough to frighten them. They had been in this demon summoning tower for so long, but they had never seen any creatures that could break through the void, and no one dared to do so. Bai Suzhen was the only one left in the 800-kilometer quicksand land. That consciousness wanted to run, but where could she go in this demon summoning tower? Her 1,000-year plan was ruined by Han Fei at this moment. How angry was she? There were 3 small white lotus marks between Bai Suzhen's eyebrows, emitting blazing light. She was trying to self-destruct. Humph! How dare a mere remnant consciousness try to commit suicide in front of me? Who gave you the courage? Bai Suzhen was forced to kneel on the ground by a single thought from the might of a king. The lotus throne under Han Fei shot out a ray of white light and wrapped Bai Suzhen. The newborn consciousness had no power to resist at all and was directly crushed by the water immortal. As the white light rolled, a large piece of blue soul was sucked into the lotus throne. However, the amount of this ownerless soul was far less than the previous batch. This was probably less than a quarter of what it was before. It should be said that the reason Bai Suzhen was able to survive alone in the Yao summoning tower was because of this strand of consciousness. At this moment, this wisp of consciousness had already been destroyed. Although it was a small amount, it was not a small amount for Han Fei. Of course, Han Fei wouldn't mind. However, he did not have the time to absorb it yet. With a thought, Han Fei stored these ownerless souls into Forge the Universe. Bai Suzhen's divine soul was pierced through between her eyebrows. Blood oozed out of her 7 orifices as she collapsed to the ground. Han Fei cast a holy light technique, and the illusion of mountains and rivers reappeared, putting her into Forge the Universe. In the blink of an eye. All of this happened very quickly. It only took a few breaths of time. Han Fei shouted, "Sir, that's enough." Outside the White Shell Kingdom, there was an ancient tower that seemed to be made out of black stone in a ring-shaped mountain range about 100,000 kilometers away. The part of the tower that was exposed above the ground had 6 floors. On each floor, there were eaves extending out, and on each eave, there were also extremely thick chains fastened to the surrounding mountains. Therefore, this tower looked as if it was forcibly fastened to the bottom of the sea by countless chains. There were 6 floors on the ground and 24 eaves, and a total of 24 peak-level Dao-seeking experts were sitting cross-legged here. Among them, Bai Wushu and Yu Qing, who had ambushed Han Fei, were sitting on the eaves on the first floor. The 2 of them were punished to guard the demon summoning tower for 30 years, and it had only been less than 3 months. Clatter suddenly, the demon summoning tower shook slightly. All the iron chains that were fastened to the eaves began to shake, making rattling noises. Because it was at the bottom of the sea, both the tower and the chains were actually full of ordinary sea melon seeds, small conches, small starfish, and other creatures. These creatures were directly shaken into powder in an instant. The demon summoning tower seemed to shake slightly, but the impurities on the 24 chains were instantly shattered, revealing the steel chains that were shining coldly. At the same time, strange runes of arrays lit up. The people guarding the demon summoning tower all changed their expressions at this moment. Someone shouted, "Not good, there must be a powerful creature in the tower attacking the seal and strengthening the array." These 24 people, each with their hands, pressed the beginning of the chain they were guarding. When the runes lit up, they poured a huge amount of spiritual energy into the runes, causing the 24 chains to suddenly flash with a strange light. Yu Qing glanced at Bai Wushu. "This is the demon summoning tower. It's just a slight vibration, and such a terrifying power is transmitted out?" Bai Wushu smiled bitterly. "What else do you think? This is just the power being transmitted out, and we haven't encountered the space turbulence yet. There was once a space turbulence, and a big demon almost got out of it. In that battle, even with the support of the array, as many as 13 people died, and only then did they barely defend the demon summoning tower. Otherwise, why do you think no one is willing to guard the demon summoning tower?" Feeling the terrifying power in the chain, Yu Qing couldn't help but ask, Will will it be okay? Bai Wushu scolded, don't curse yourself. Of course it will be okay. It's just a normal vibration. Crack, however, as soon as Bai Wushu said that, a muffled sound resounded for thousands of kilometers. Just when everyone thought that this was a normal act of suppression, a huge crack appeared in the surrounding ring-shaped mountain range with a cracking sound. It was like the movement of the Earth's crust during an earthquake, and a huge crack appeared on the ground. How similar was the scene at this moment? The terrifying and huge cracks on the mountain in the distance were rapidly being torn apart and gradually enlarging. Immediately, someone roared, "Danger, danger! Do your best, don't hold back." In the demon's summoning tower, at this moment, there was a green vine that directly broke through multiple barriers from the bottom, almost piercing through all the barriers in the demon's summoning tower. Han Fei could even see that the water fairy's body was withering. One after another, the vines and white lotuses withered after providing a terrifying amount of power. Han Fei asked, "Master, are you okay?" The water fairy replied, "I'm fine. Since I've given up this body, I'll let it play its last use. With my king-level body, I'll pierce through this 9-story demon tower." The water fairy's voice was cold and sharp. "All creatures in the tower, listen up. I'm going to sacrifice myself to break the tower. If you don't want to be suppressed and want to leave, you'd better try your best to destroy this place." "Who? King? Okay." In fact, the shock of the king's power was directly transmitted to the big demons in the demon summoning tower. They had to believe in the crazy attack of such a creature. Of course, some small demons didn't have such awareness. Through the layers of seals, Han Fei seemed to be able to hear some people questioning and wondering, how can there be king-level creatures here? Some creatures seemed to have guessed that there was a king-level creature here. Hearing that the king was going to break the tower, how could they not follow? As long as they broke the tower, who could stop them? On the 8th floor of the demon's summoning tower, a giant shark suddenly opened its eyes. Dong! A terrifying power hit the seal on the wall of the tower. On the 7th floor of the demon's summoning tower, a golden lobster stretched out its pincers and hit the wall of the tower. The tentacles of a large red octopus were like whips of death as they suddenly lashed out. Apart from the dangerous creatures that were suppressed on the bottom floor, countless other creatures began to crazily hit the wall of the tower. Because of the water fairy's words, the entire demon summoning tower was rioted and thousands of creatures attacked at the same time. Outside the Yao ceiling pagoda, rumbling sounds could be heard from all sides of the pagoda. Bam! A peak-level Tao-seeking big demon was channeling spiritual energy into the array with all his strength. In the end, an explosion like a great bell suddenly rang in his ears. Like the descent of a demonic sound, its head exploded with a loud bang. Before he could react, his upper body was blown up. The terrifying power spread in all directions. One person exploded, and the surrounding area became unstable. At least 4 people spat out blood. Walala, the chains shook crazily. Someone yelled at the conch, "Something is wrong in the demon summoning tower. Help!" Dong! Like a giant bell, an unknown power hit the demon summoning tower, and the ground of the entire demon summoning tower cracked. The arms of a peak-level Tao-seeking big demon were instantly crushed into powder. A peak-level Tao-seeking big demon was shattered into pieces. Oh no, hold on. The demon summoning tower is in chaos. Crack, crack, crack. Bang! Just as this person finished speaking, he saw the incomparably thick chain in front of him suddenly let out a zzz-ka-ka sound. Then, with a bam, it broke apart. Half of the broken chain whipped the tower and the other half at the ring of mountains. There was a loud noise. The ceiling array of the person who had just spoken exploded. His body, like a porcelain doll, was shaken until it was covered in cracks. With a dong sound, a terrifying shockwave struck the body of the pagoda, causing it to explode. In the White Shell Kingdom. The moment the White Armor Emperor saw the suppressing demon pagoda tremble, he looked over. However, what he didn't expect was that even he thought it was just a slight shake of the demon summoning tower. He didn't expect that the next moment, the mountain collapsed, and the chain broke. All venerables of the White Shell Kingdom, listen to my order. Follow me to suppress the demon summoning tower. The White Armor Emperor's expression changed drastically. After countless years, the demon summoning tower finally moved. He had studied the demon summoning tower for too long, but he didn't dare to step in because he was afraid of the power inside. At this moment, under the White Armor Emperor's order, the spiritual energy in more than 50 places in the White Shell Kingdom shook. Some people broke through, some flew into the sky, and some tore the void to go to the demon summoning tower. The White Armor Emperor took a step and appeared above the demon summoning tower. However, the moment he appeared, a blue light bloomed on the tower. The remaining 20 peak-level Tao-seeking demons on the tower suddenly began to tear their flesh. A large amount of vine algae grew from their eyes, ears, mouths, and noses. Ah, my lord, save me. A white lotus grew out of Bai Wushu's chest. At this moment, it exploded with a boom. He had thought about who he would choose as his master after returning to the White Shell Kingdom. How could he know that as soon as he came to the demon summoning tower, chaos broke out in the demon summoning tower? What kind of fate was this? Seeing this scene, the White Armor Emperor's eyes flickered. These people couldn't be saved. How could they survive the attack of a king? The White Armor Emperor pressed his big hand on the top of the demon summoning tower and said in a low voice, "You finally made a move." Chapter 1302. As the only king of the White Shell King City, the White Armor Emperor naturally knew the danger of the demon sealing tower. However, this danger had been dormant for too long. It had existed since it was discovered, but it had never erupted. The White Armor Emperor even once felt that the danger under the demon sealing tower might no longer be a threat. Until the moment when the White Armor Emperor became a king, he wanted to enter the demon sealing tower and look for the opportunity at the bottom of the tower. However, at that time, he felt the arrival of a king's aura, which seriously threatened him. At that time, the White Armor Emperor had just entered the king realm. He even thought that if there was a king lurking in the demon sealing tower for tens of thousands of years, its strength must not be underestimated. Therefore, the last time, he only made a tentative move. In the end, he didn't succeed. Until today, the White Armor Emperor had also tried to test the danger under the demon sealing tower many times. However, every time, he could feel an unparalleled and terrifying vitality. It was precisely because of this vitality that he felt scared. This made him suspect that the strength of the one below might have reached the end of the king realm. However, the existence at the bottom of the tower had never really made a move, nor had he thought of coming out of the demon sealing tower, nor had he shown any threat. Because of this, the White Armor Emperor had never wanted to touch the demon sealing tower. Even at this moment, when the White Armor Emperor first arrived, he still held the seal of the demon sealing tower with one hand, trying to continue suppressing the existence below. At least, he didn't want to let him out until the other party showed his identity and whether he was a friend or a foe. The waterwood sky was only so big, and the three kings standing side by side already seemed a little cramped. If another one came, it might be the strongest one. Who could stand it? The White Armor Emperor was naturally also worried. Would this existence take over his White Shell King City? Buzz, 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 one venerable after another came one after another. When they saw the ring-shaped mountains around them that were about to collapse and the two broken chains, they couldn't help but be surprised. Why did the demon sealing tower make such a big noise this time? Seeing that the White Armor Emperor personally suppressed the demon sealing tower, the venerables all guessed that the legendary existence in the demon sealing tower was coming out. The White Armor Emperor spoke again. I know that this demon sealing tower may not be able to suppress you. However, with the help of this grand array, it won't be so easy for you to break out. Who are you? The Water Immortal said leisurely, let go. I will return to my wall of death. Don't force me to fight you. Hiss. Many people gasped. They didn't expect there to be a peerless king in the demon sealing tower. Some of them secretly pushed their power to the limit, intending to save themselves at this critical juncture. This was a battle between kings. If a war were to break out, martial highnesses like them would die if they were careless. While the white armor emperor's face was solemn, a clear voice sounded, "I told you to fuck off." In front of Han Fei, the water fairy might be a kind teacher. However, the water immortal was a king after all. How could she be so easy to deal with? Bang bang bang. In the eyes of the white armor emperor and the other venerables, green demonic vines stretched out from the ground around the Yao ceiling tower. Every vine that stretched out was like a dragon swimming out of the depths of the sea, writhing and twisting, tightly gripping onto the body of the tower. On the 22 chains of demon suppression, vines unfurled and white lotuses began to bloom. Humph! The white armor emperor shouted in a low voice, "You said to go to the wall of death. How can I believe you? Besides, if you want to take the entire Yao ceiling tower to the wall of death, you will inevitably break a corner of the seal. At that time, all the monsters will go to sea. How can I let you go?" As he spoke, the white armor emperor's millstone-like hand stretched out to 1,000 meters. Thousands of spatial cracks appeared around the Yao ceiling pagoda. With a series of bangs, the vines exploded one after another. Each vine exploded like the power of the sea. Within 100 kilometers, sand and stones were flying, waves were rolling, the seabed was sinking, and even the seawater was flowing backward. Such a terrifying explosion flattened the surrounding ring-shaped mountains in an instant. All the venerables who came were horrified. Was this the tentative confrontation between kings? A casual blow seemed to have the terrifying power close to that of an advanced venerable. Moreover, in their vision, the white lotuses around the Yao ceiling tower were even more terrifying than the green vines. Because under such a terrifying bombardment, those white lotuses were not damaged at all. Even the white armor emperor was a little shocked. This was beyond the scope of a tentative confrontation. It could be said that if he hadn't come in person, even if all the venerables of the White Shell Royal City came, they probably wouldn't be able to completely suppress this power. Swish! 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 3 white lotuses spun and flew towards the white armor emperor. The white armor emperor's face was solemn, and he was no longer arrogant. 2 big white gongs appeared out of thin air. The white armor emperor said, "Retreat for 1,000 kilometers." As the white armor emperor gave the order, everyone hurriedly retreated, knowing that most venerables couldn't resist a battle of this level. Dong bang! 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 When the 3 white lotuses exploded, the 2 gongs struck together. A wave visible to the naked eye instantly shattered the surrounding mountains. Before the aftermath, under the violent impact of the shaking ripples and waves, the gravel within 1,000 kilometers was emptied. Huge waves thousands of meters high appeared on the surface of the sea, and a terrifying spherical space with a radius of more than 10 kilometers appeared at the bottom of the sea. This attack was so powerful that even the white armor emperor's sleeves had been shattered. His 2 arms were covered with bloodstains. And the surface of the 2 big conches that had just been summoned became distorted. The white armor emperor shouted, "Do you really think I can't do anything to you? If you continue to be unreasonable, don't blame me for attacking you with all my strength." The white armor emperor looked solemn, looking at the 9-story demon tower that had been completely exposed at the bottom of the sea. 8 of the demon-suppressing chains had been broken. If he allowed the person in the tower to continue to attack, it would only be a matter of time. It was only a matter of time before the outer seal of the demon-suppressing tower was broken. However, the white armor emperor was also a little frightened by the water fairy's strength. The terrifying power of the 3 lotuses had completely exceeded the limit of the demi-king realm and had reached the early stage of the king realm. Don't underestimate the early stage of the king realm. The water fairy's power was launched from the inside of the demon-suppressing tower. This terrifying power should have been greatly weakened by the demon-suppressing tower itself, but it could still burst out such a terrifying power. From this, it could be seen how powerful the person inside was. In the demon-suppressing tower, Han Fei looked solemn. He didn't know what the battle outside was like. Anyway, the inside of the demon-suppressing tower was in a mess. Since the water fairy started attacking, the shaking had never stopped. The roars from different big monsters never stopped. But what really made Han Fei solemn was that the water fairy's energy consumption was too high. He didn't know how the water fairy attacked. Anyway, Han Fei saw that the lotuses in her body were withering one after another. Based on this speed, the water immortal's body would be destroyed in less than an hour. At the most, it would take half an hour. Han Fei asked, "Master, did you encounter any difficulties?" The water fairy said, "In order to condense your incarnation, my strength has fallen. Now, I can only use the power of my body to barely exert the combat power of a king realm warrior. If we fight outside, it's fine. However, the seal of the demon suppressing tower limits my strength." Han Fei frowned. "Then what should we do?" The water fairy snorted lightly. "Let's try our best." Outside. The white armor emperor's face suddenly froze. He saw a total of 8 flower buds suddenly emerging from the void. He shouted in a low voice, "Are you crazy? We're separated by the Yao ceiling pagoda, yet you're attacking so recklessly. Do you want to die?" The water fairy's voice was cold. "I want to open the sky and go back to the wall of death. Let me ask you, are you going to let me go or not?" Anyway, this was the last moment of the water fairy's body. The water fairy was completely relaxed. She had never fought so crazily in her life. Frightened by the water fairy's words, the white armor emperor was shocked. This person wants to open the sky. Could it be that the reason why this person has been dormant for so long is to break through to the heaven-opening state? Yes, this person has never died. His vitality has always been extremely strong, far better than mine. If not, he would have taken action long ago. In order to open the sky, this person has been dormant for tens of thousands of years. His patience was terrifying. Hum. Hum. 8 flower buds began to bloom, and rays of white light pierced through the sea. The lotus rushed at the white armor emperor again with brilliance. Inside the pagoda, Water Immortal shouted, "All living beings, lend this king a hand and crash into the pagoda." Rumble, the white armor emperor was speechless. There was no sign at all. How could such a terrible battle happen? Is the big shot inside accumulating power to the limit and is about to open the sky? However, even if this big shot wants to open the sky, why does she want to go to the wall of death? Is there the power to open the sky in the wall of death? The white armor emperor had some inexplicable guesses. He roared, "Stop! This prince will let you pass. You just want to go to the wall of death. Just go. I have no grudge against you. After all, we have been neighbors for so long. Why would I stop you?" Of course, Han Fei also heard the white armor emperor's words. When the white armor emperor spoke, Han Fei hurriedly said, "Master, don't believe it, don't believe it, don't believe it. You can't believe a sea demon." The water fairy's voice trembled slightly. "Do you think I'm stupid? This person probably doesn't want to fight me head-on at this time. But I don't know what he has up his sleeve." The demon's subduing tower, together with part of the mountain, flew into the air, like a fairy mountain crossing the sea, 1,000 miles in an instant. The white armor emperor shouted, "Everyone, get ready. There will be a battle at the wall of death. Kill the enemy with all your strength." Chapter 1303. Because it happened so suddenly, the white armor emperor wasn't prepared. In a hurry, a super strong master who was ready to break through to the heaven-opening state came out of the demon prison tower. No matter what, he couldn't let this person live. First of all, this person was not a sea demon, but a super strong existence like a demonic plant. In the entire waterwood heavenly land, the cloud sea divine tree was a demonic plant, the blood sea divine wood was a demonic plant, and the life queen was still a demonic plant. None of these 3 were on his side. They were all his enemies. So, this lotus demonic plant couldn't be on his side if there was no accident. Most likely, it would still become his enemy. Even if the other party didn't become his enemy, even if this lotus demonic plant stood on the white shell royal city's side, so what? The other party could break through to the heaven-opening state. If she really succeeded, who would have the final say in the white shell royal city in the future? However, if he killed this lotus demonic plant, it might be another kind of opportunity. A king-level creature stronger than him happened to be trapped now. She happened to be in a disadvantageous situation, and she happened to be about to cross the wall of death. It could be said that it was the right time and place. It was all on his side. Even if he couldn't kill her, he had to seriously injure her so that she had no hope of breaking through. Only in this way could the balance be maintained. The demon prison tower was right next to the wall of death. Because of this, the creatures that occasionally rushed out of the wall of death would be locked in the demon prison tower. In mid-air, the demon prison tower was constantly rumbling, and those chains had already been uprooted. Countless big monsters were roaring in the tower. If they relied on themselves, it would be impossible for them to break out of the demon prison tower without becoming a king. Now, a king-level powerhouse had taken the initiative to stand up. No matter how stupid they were, they would riot with him. When the 24 chains exploded, the sealing power of the Yao sealing pagoda suddenly weakened by a layer. However, although the chains were broken and the terrain collapsed, countless runes lit up on the body of the demon prison tower. Where on earth did the demon prison tower come from? It had a lot of tricks, just like the Avenger that Han Fei had built himself. Although he knew it would break, he couldn't break it in a short time. Time was of the essence. The water deity quickly said to Han Fei, "Listen up, according to the initial plan, when the king attacks, I will detonate the rest of my body. When the time comes, I will transform again and open up a void passage. I don't know where they can go either. However, with your abilities, it shouldn't be a problem for you to escape." Han Fei had no objection. Anyway, the water immortal had already decided to abandon this body. At this moment, why would he care about how much capital he had to invest? Inside the Yao sealing pagoda, countless creatures were attacking. The water immortal's terrifying power was exploding. On the Yao sealing pagoda, a large number of seals were shattering. The corners of the white armor Thearka's mouth twitched. It seemed that the creatures in the demon sealing tower had gone crazy. The white armor emperor frowned slightly. The origin of the demon subduing pagoda had always been a mystery. However, he had been guarding the White Shell Kingdom for a long time and knew that there were 3 entrances to the demon subduing tower. One was inside the Wall of Death, one was the forbidden passage of White Shell Imperial City, and the last was the Yao sealing tower. There was a door on the tower, which was on the lowest level. It was usually buried underground. But at this moment, it was exposed. Except for these 3 entrances, there were no other entrances to the demon subduing tower. The White Armor Emperor knew this, but he didn't know whether the Lotus Demon knew it or not. At this moment, it happened so suddenly that he had no choice but to kill the Water Immortal. Han Fei couldn't see what was going on outside from the demon subduing tower. He only knew that the entire demon subduing tower was shaking. All the creatures here seemed to be on a rampage and were madly attacking the seal of the tower. At this moment, the Water Immortal stretched out his hand, and a spinning lotus flower appeared in his palm. It was so fast that it couldn't be seen by the naked eye. Pushed by the Water Immortal, it was directly pressed into the seal of the demon subduing tower. Han Fei could even see that in the seal, the array patterns overlapped with each other. At a glance, there must be hundreds of layers. It was the first time that Han Fei had seen such a terrifying array layout. This was beyond the scope of his ability. Han Fei thought that he was already very awesome if he could carve a ship array like the Avenger. However, at this moment, when Han Fei saw this magical combination of hundreds of layers, it was as if the demon subduing tower had put on 100 layers of battle armor. Therefore, it was naturally very difficult to break it with one blow. However, Water Immortal pressed White Lotus back into the array and said, "It only looks scary. If he really is a top expert who has surpassed the King Realm, he wouldn't have to use this method to seal this so-called suppressing demon pagoda." The fact that I can still break such a complicated array only shows that the strength of the person who set up the array is not as strong as I think. I suspect that this person is at most half a king realm, and this demon-subduing tower may just be a replica. Hiss. Han Fei took a deep breath. This is a fucking replica. This is already enough to suppress the king realm. In Han Fei's heart, the old turtle also agreed. She's right. If it were me, I wouldn't have used such a complicated array to seal this tower. This tower actually can't suppress the king realm. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to get out. The white lotus bloomed in the layers of arrays. The shadow of the lotus expanded rapidly. The petals, like magical blades, drilled a hole in the surrounding array. Han Fei said in surprise, breaking the array with force. Master, this will consume a lot of energy. The water immortal said casually, I've already abandoned this body and I'm fighting with all my strength. Why should I be afraid? The water immortal stretched out his hands again and threw out 2 more white lotuses, which made Han Fei's blood go numb. Although the water immortal didn't want his king body anymore, it was still a pity to see such extravagant waste. No matter what, in order to cultivate this king's body, the water immortal's hard work was definitely not small. He saw that the first white lotus had already drilled out of the Yao Ceiling Pagoda's grand formation, leaving an empty space. At this moment, Han Fei suddenly thought of something and immediately shouted, fuse. When little black and little white fused, Han Fei suddenly took a breath. He actually saw the outside of the demon-subduing tower from the inside. To be precise, it was not the outside, but the scene of the demon-subduing tower sweeping through the void. After a few minutes, Han Fei saw a grayish-white mist. According to the flow of the mist, Han Fei could even be sure that there was a terrifying hurricane outside. It was common sense that the mist was blown away by the wind. However, the wind was extremely strong, and the void was also shattered, turning the surrounding mist into mist. However, Han Fei still sensed that he had arrived at the wall of death. Outside, the White Armor Emperor was also anxious. He knew that the Water Immortal didn't completely believe him. Because the array of the demon-subduing tower was broken one after another. Although compared with the countless layers of array marks in the demon-subduing tower, there weren't many broken ones. However, for a king, it was possible to drill out of a hole when it was broken. Now, although the tower hadn't been broken, it might not be able to hold for long. The White Armor Emperor snorted coldly. Aren't you going to the Wall of Death? Why do you want to break out now? The Wall of Death was less than 10,000 kilometers away. The Water Immortal didn't really want to break through the Wall of Death. She just wanted to create an environment and find an opportunity to detonate her body and send Han Fei away. Therefore, when the Water Immortal saw the Wall of Death, the 8 lotus flowers outside the tower pierced through the void at the same time and smashed at the White Armor Emperor without warning. The White Armor Emperor's face turned cold. Humph. If I knew you were up to no good, I wouldn't have left. Do you think I'm not prepared? Everyone, run 3,000 kilometers away. As soon as the White Armor Emperor said this, the group of venerables ran again. He had no choice but to run. Even the White Armor Emperor, a dignified monarch, had summoned his companion spirit. At the moment when the 8 lotus flowers pierced through the void was torn, and a giant shell more than 1,000 meters wide emerged from the void. The White Armor the Arch took a step forward and appeared inside the shell. Boom, 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 8 terrifying explosions in a row. It could be said that the bottom of the sea was capsized and the sky was cracked. Endless gray fog and hurricanes burst out, and the speed was so fast that even the wind blades could kill a venerable. The terrifying shell of the White Armor Emperor was blasted back more than 800 kilometers. The void crack stretched across the sky. The White Armor Emperor gritted his teeth and shouted, "Since you broke your promise, don't blame me for being ruthless." The White Armor Emperor directly hit the demon-subduing tower with the shell. Then, there was a dang sound that connected the heavens and earth, triggering endless waves. Within 1,000 kilometers, all the creatures on the bottom of the sea were instantly crushed by this terrifying power. The demon-subduing tower was knocked out at a terrifying speed. It was about to hit the wall of death. The water immortal's heart skipped a beat. I underestimated the power of this king. If this wall of death was really as Han Fei said, it would be possible to crash into it. It wouldn't be easy to come out again. Open. Inside the tower, the water immortal's 3 white lotuses collided with the overlapping arrays one after another, forcibly knocking out the 8th, 7th, and 6th floors that suppressed her. The water immortal shouted softly, "If you don't want to stay here, rush out. I'll stop the kings outside. You can hunt those venerables." Huh. A terrifying black-striped shark rushed out, opened its mouth and seemed to be able to swallow the sea. It said, "Thank you for opening the way, my king." A big octopus was extremely fast. It drilled through the void crack and shouted, "Thank you for opening the way, my king." A big lobster opened the void crack with its 2 pincers, rushed out, and shouted, "I'm finally out." At the moment when the demon-subduing tower crashed into the wall of death, more than 20 venerable big monsters drilled out of the tower. The White Armor Emperor had already walked out of the shell. However, he didn't have time to care about those venerables. He knew very well that he couldn't give the water immortal a chance to come out. The White Armor Emperor shouted, "Listen to my order, venerables, kill them." Among the group of venerables, 2 of Han Fei's acquaintances were there. Hai Tinglei, the law enforcer of the royal city, and Changshui Qin, the chief examiner of the secret realm, both looked solemn at this moment. Hai Tinglei even took a deep breath. "That shark is half a king. Let me fight it." Changshui Qin said, "Let me handle that octopus." On the other side, the water immortal was like a white lotus. She had just blasted a path for herself when she saw a large gong blocking her way. The White Armor Emperor said, "If you want to come out, you have to ask me first." The water immortal frowned and stamped her feet. As if she had gone crazy, 13 giant vines clung to the exit in a row. She knew that she had to blast this way and force the White Armor Emperor to retreat. Otherwise, Han Fei wouldn't be able to get out. Once the demon-subduing tower was blasted into the wall of death, Han Fei might as well stay in the demon-subduing tower. Seeing that the water immortal seemed to be going all out, the White Armor Emperor immediately went all out. He couldn't let this person stay in the water, would heaven. Otherwise, his status would be threatened. The White Armor Emperor roared, and the power in his hands surged as if he was going to attack with all his strength. "This is my domain. You can't stay here. Get out of here." Chapter 1304. Until now, the White Armor Emperor still felt that the water immortal was much stronger than him. Seeing the water immortal attack so crazily, he admitted that he wouldn't have been able to do it if it were him. After all, he knew very well how strong the seal of the demon-subduing tower was. If he tried his best, he might be able to break out of it at the risk of losing much of his cultivation. However, how could a king be a fool? It was not easy to become a king. The White Armor Emperor had no idea that the water immortal was just bluffing with his last body. At this moment, the White Armor Emperor didn't dare to be careless. He believed that the more powerful and terrifying the water deity was, the more it meant that the water deity's true abilities far surpassed his. The White Armor Emperor blocked the hole in the suppressing demon tower with the big gong that he had polished for 10,000 years, which could be called a sea-quelling bizarre treasure, forcibly blocking the water immortal's way. The water immortal was a little confused. "Are you so afraid of me? You'd rather sacrifice 2 sea-quelling bizarre treasures to block me?" However, seeing that he was less than 3,000 kilometers away from the wall of death, the water immortal made up his mind. "I don't even want my body anymore. Why would I be afraid of 2 elementary sea-quelling bizarre treasures?" Explode. Rumble. Even Han Fei, who was inside the demon-subduing tower, was thrown away by this terrifying force. If it weren't for the hundreds of complicated arrays in the demon-subduing tower, Han Fei felt that he might have been crushed to death in an instant. Within this grayish-white fog, there were close to 30 battlefields. Because the force was too strong, the space here was dented, and cracks appeared in the void. Bam! Bam! Maybe because they were too close to the wall of death, people could vaguely hear the roars of creatures in the wall of death, and some giant beasts and demons seemed to be trying to break through the barrier. Rumble, lightning fell all over the sky, and Hai Ting Lei and the giant shark fought crazily. The two were fighting in the void, but at the moment when the lightning fell, with a crack, the void shattered. The terrifying shock wave directly sent him and the giant shark flying. Hai Ting Lei was shocked. A trace of the power of a king can crush the void? After the shock wave arrived, it took a full 3 breaths of time before the sound of metal clashing could be heard. A terrifying circular shockwave soared into the sky and covered a radius of more than 10,000 miles. The 2 gongs of the White Armor Emperor were now riddled with holes of all sizes. They had been blown into fragments of the sea-quelling bizarre treasures, and the exit could not be blocked at all. The White Armor Emperor's arms were stained with blood, his eyes were red, and blood was gushing out of his mouth. His entire body was forcibly blasted through the void and sent flying more than 5,000 miles away. The Yao Ceiling Pagoda wasn't any better. At least 10% of the complex and terrifying ceiling formation had been destroyed, as if a layer of its skin had been peeled off. This 10% seal couldn't be underestimated. If Han Fei slowly cracked this 10% seal, even if it was placed in front of him for him to crack, it would take at least 10 years. However, it had been destroyed in a single strike. Not only was 10% of the Yao Ceiling Pagoda's sealing power destroyed, but the entire pagoda pierced through the void and crashed into an invisible barrier. Bam! Crack, 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 Han Fei couldn't believe it, and the corner of his mouth twitched. Because he found that the Yao Ceiling Pagoda was stuck by an invisible barrier. Judging from the cracks formed by the terrifying power around it, half of the Yao Ceiling Pagoda had crashed into the wall of death, and the other half hadn't. The point was that the Yao Ceiling Pagoda was suspended in the air, with no top or bottom. It was stuck in the middle of the wall of death. It couldn't fall down, and it seemed that it couldn't be pulled out either. Han Fei took a deep breath. What's going on? The Water Immortal was also a bit confused. Is this the so-called Wall of Death? It seems a bit very generous. The old turtle was also a bit confused. It's the first time I've seen such a terrifying sealing power. This is definitely not a sealing boundary that a king-level creature can set up. The person who set up this formation has probably surpassed the level of opening the sky and may have reached the immortal realm. Han Fei raised his eyelids. Old Yuan, I'm not an educated person. Don't lie to me. You keep talking about the barren land, and looking at the history of the Waterwood Heaven and the Yin-Yang Heaven, how can there be an immortal-level supermaster here? Why don't you say that there are gods here too? The old turtle said leisurely, in a sense, the immortal level is the realm of gods, the realm of fake gods. Gulp. Han Fei swallowed. What should we do now? Master, can we still go out? The Water Immortal was a bit unstable at the moment. Han Fei saw that her soul and willpower had become a lot fainter, and the area covered by her body was only about 300 kilometers. It could be seen how crazy the consumption was just now. The Water Immortal shouted softly, Little Wang Han, I didn't expect this person to be so stubborn. He used 2 sea-quelling bizarre treasures to block me in this Yao Ceiling Pagoda. He's here again. How could the White Armor Emperor not come? He was worried that if the Water Immortal came out, his White Shell Royal City would immediately be taken by someone else. He might even be chased to the point where he had no way to escape to the heavens and no gate to the earth. Therefore, this time, no matter what, he had to stop this woman. The Water Immortal glanced at the power of her body, which seemed to be a little bit insufficient. The Water Immortal said, Little Wang Han, how did you come in? Han Fei hurriedly said, There is a forbidden area in the White Shell Royal City, and there is a hole in the forbidden area, which should be the weakness of the void of the Yao Ceiling Pagoda. That's where I came in. However, after I came in, I couldn't find the way back. The Water Immortal asked, Is there another way out of this pagoda? The water immortal glanced around, and Han Fei felt that a terrifying soul power swept across the entire Yao ceiling pagoda in an instant. Boom! Outside, the water immortal and the white armor emperor fought again. This time, the Yao ceiling pagoda moved a little deeper into the wall of death. The water immortal suddenly had an idea. Found it. You'd better bring me back the way we came. Whether you can survive or not depends on whether you can leave the White Shell Royal City or not. Han Fei said in surprise, so simple. Then why do we still have to break through the seal? Master, why don't you come with me and destroy the sea demon's camp? The water immortal said, didn't you say you were going to release these big demons? You want to smash a hole in the wall of death. I think it's not a bad idea to destroy half of the sea demon royal city without my main body. However, I've underestimated the opponents of this era. Besides, this passage is too fragile. Even venerables can't enter it. If I leave, it will collapse in an instant. Han Fei was speechless. Then what do we do now? Wait for me to transform. From the very beginning, when the water immortal just woke up in the Thousand Mountain ancient realm, she already knew what kind of path she had to take. She was going to condense herself into an ancient big seed and be reborn. This time, she had been preparing for this big seed for tens of thousands of years. Once such a person was born, their innate talent would definitely be so terrifying that it would make people's hair stand on end. At this moment, the water immortal's soul phantom swooshed and turned into a transparent glowing sphere. Then, the sphere began to frantically absorb energy that might be chaotic aura from all directions. At the last moment, the water immortal's voice echoed, "Little Wang Han, I'll fake the explosion of my body with the last blow and open a way for you. However, there are many space turbulences, and this way is extremely dangerous. If you perish, I'll still be fine. I'll still be able to drift about in the void. But you might really perish. So, leave your incarnation here, and I'll send you to the third floor." Han Fei frowned and said in surprise, "Is it so dangerous?" "Master, wait a minute." However, Han Fei was obviously too late, because he saw 27 white lotus flowers suddenly appear. Seeing this, his blood froze. The old turtle hurriedly said, "The so-called space turbulence was created by her own explosion. This woman is really ruthless." Han Fei thought, "Of course, I don't need you to tell me that. In the 100,000 mountains, there is no one who isn't ruthless." The White Armor Emperor didn't know the Water Immortal's plan. At this moment, he was holding the fragment of the sea-quelling bizarre treasure. He wanted to stuff these two pieces into the demon ceiling tower and blow them up. The White Armor Emperor shouted, "I don't believe that you can still kill me with the demon ceiling tower between you and me. Explode." At that moment, the battlefield fell into silence. Some of the creatures released from the demon ceiling tower began to stop. After all, it was the king who decided the outcome of this battle. Whichever side's king won, that side would win. As the White Armor Emperor said, it was too disadvantageous for the Water Immortal to fight with the demon ceiling tower between them. If the Water Immortal was defeated, they had to run away quickly. However, when the White Armor Emperor rushed to the demon ceiling tower, he was dumbfounded when he saw 27 white lotus flowers. "Wow! Lunatic! You are a lunatic!" Boom, boom, boom. Han Fei didn't know what was happening outside. Under the urging of the old turtle, Han Fei was holding a green seed the size of an ordinary peach pit and quickly drilling into a space crack. Now, Han Fei could only feel the vibration of the demon ceiling tower. However, it was no longer on the same floor as before. So, he couldn't see what was happening outside. At that moment of crisis, Han Fei asked, "Old Yuan, will the demon ceiling tower be blown up?" The old turtle replied, "No, it won't. After all, it has been accumulated for tens of thousands of years. How can it be destroyed so easily?" Han Fei gritted his teeth, and the phantom of mountains and rivers appeared. His lotus root body appeared in the demon ceiling tower. Along with the lotus root body, most of Han Fei's resources were left. The old turtle asked, "Are you really going to stay?" Han Fei made up his mind. Stay. The creatures in the demon ceiling tower are not weak. If I can come back one day, I will find a way to come back and take the lotus root body away. If I can't come back, this place will be my second body. Han Fei made up his mind. Compared with the treacherous yin-yang heaven, this demon ceiling tower could even be said to be a hidden paradise. Especially when he was still on the third floor. If he was invincible on this floor, what was the difference between this and a hidden paradise? Dong, dong, dong. As soon as Han Fei's figure disappeared into the void, the sound of bells rang in his ears. Vaguely, there seemed to be a familiar voice, and he heard the White Armor Emperor shout, Mu Wu Hua. Unfortunately, this voice was too obscene. After all, the space had changed. However, because everything happened too quickly, it only left a trace in the void. Puff, puff, puff. In the blink of an eye, Han Fei's body was cut with hundreds of wounds. Countless space cracks appeared around him. Fuse. After fusing with Little Black and Little White, Han Fei activated the Dao Seed and gave himself a layer of power. My defense is invincible. Chapter 1305. In fact, Han Fei wanted to give himself a prophecy that he could pass through this channel smoothly. However, as soon as this idea came up, he knew it wouldn't work. Although his great path was somewhat similar to the power of prophecy and could change some rules in a small range. However, it couldn't exceed a certain range. Obviously, directly predicting a safe result was completely beyond the scope of his great path. At this moment, Han Fei activated the Invincible Will protective cover. Under his feet, he used the Heavenly Void Divine Walking technique to create the 64-dimensional fish dragon dance. In this dark void, Han Fei was like a golden dancing elf, so fast that there was only a wisp of golden light left. It was different from the way he came. When he came, Han Fei directly entered through the weak point of the void. However, when he went back, the water fairy's body exploded, and the terrifying power swept across thousands of kilometers. The residual power might not dissipate for years. In this case, Han Fei crossed the void, which was much more dangerous than when he came. Even though Han Fei's speed was extremely fast, there were hundreds of space cracks cutting his body almost every second. His diamond body lasted for about 2 minutes and was almost unable to maintain it. Bam! The diamond body disappeared, and the Invincible Will kept hissing as if there were countless knives cutting his body surface. Although the Invincible Will was also cut, Han Fei didn't panic at all. Under his feet, the coiled turtle array appeared one after another, and in his hand, he threw 7 or 8 great turtle array fish skin pictures at once. Even so, it took Han Fei a full 12 or 13 seconds to barely cross the space turbulence and reappear in the forbidden area of the royal city. The moment he landed in the forbidden area, Han Fei was covered in blood, and the golden blood stained his skin. This made Han Fei look as if he had been washed with gold powder. Han Fei's perception swept around and saw that there was no one around, so he didn't let a drop of blood fall to the ground. With a flash, he disappeared into the lightning prison. When Han Fei appeared in the thunder prison, he heard rumbling sounds, and lightning struck down. Phew! Although he was struck several times in a row, Han Fei still breathed a long sigh of relief. As soon as he came back to his senses, a holy light technique descended, and the thousands of tiny wounds on his body quickly healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. As Han Fei flashed again, he appeared directly in Forge the Universe. At this point, Han Fei had enough time to rest. There should still be a month left. At this moment, Han Fei's soul was greatly damaged, so he needed to come in first and swallow the ownerless souls. The Fish Dragon King had been trapped in Forge the Universe for a long time. Seeing that Han Fei didn't appear with his own face, he immediately asked warily, "What are you going to do?" Ignoring him, Han Fei said straightforwardly, "No one is allowed to speak in my place." Not bothering to listen to the Fish Dragon King's nonsense, Han Fei directly sealed the small space where the Fish Dragon King was. In Forge the Universe, Han Fei's will was above everything else. Han Fei continued to block the vision of the Fish Dragon King. After doing this, Han Fei reached out and grabbed the blue soul fire floating in Forge the Universe. The old turtle said, "Fortunately, you came back the way you came, otherwise, I would have to control Gue Sanqing to escape." Han Fei curled his lips. "I wonder how the demon-suppressing tower is doing." The old turtle sneered. "What can you do? Your master blew up his body. That's enough to make that king suffer." Han Fei suddenly said, "Old Yuan, when I entered the channel, I seemed to hear the words Mu Wu Hua. Did you hear it?" The old turtle said, "You heard it right. If I'm not mistaken, it should be the life queen of the waterwood heaven." However, when Han Fei's body escaped, the battle outside the demon-suppressing tower at the Wall of Death was only halfway through. When he saw the water fairy's shocking blow, the White Armor Emperor finally realized that something was wrong. The water fairy didn't look like she was trying to come out. It was more like she was risking her life. If the previous white lotuses were a way of fighting, he would have thought it was a way of fighting. However, when the last 27 white lotuses broke through the void, the terrifying vitality made him panic. That was risking his life, wasn't it? At that moment, the shocking big shell reappeared, and the White Armor Emperor drilled into it, trying to escape. And nearby, the venerable big monsters who were fighting, seeing this, didn't care about fighting anymore. They directly tore the void and fled frantically, for fear that they would run too slow. Rumble. The unparalleled power covered 10,000 kilometers in the blink of an eye. Above the four seas, the wind was sweeping, above the sky, a rain of blood was pouring down. No matter how fast those venerables ran, 5 or 6 of them were caught up by the explosion, and even their bodies and souls were directly blown to pieces. They couldn't resist at all. There were even more people whose hearts were filled with shock. A king had fallen. The heavens' cry is coming. The crimson crack in the sky couldn't be fake. Because the White Armor Emperor was in the center of the storm, the 2 gongs were completely destroyed, and he suffered internal injuries. The big white shell was bombarded by the 27 lotuses in a row, and a total of 9 cracks appeared on it. The White Armor Emperor was speechless. What happened to breaking through to the heaven-opening state? He even guessed that it was impossible for him to stop the water fairy. The water fairy was likely to come out. What's more, the White Armor Emperor was ready to open the big array of the capital. However, the water fairy died. At that time, the White Armor Emperor had too many doubts in his heart, feeling that he had been played. He was shocked, angry, and aggrieved, as if 10,000 iron-headed fish were galloping in his heart. However, this result was really out of his expectations. He guessed that the water fairy would be injured, escape to heal, and then attack the capital of the white shell, but he didn't expect that the water fairy would die. He had been dormant for tens of thousands of years, and finally moved, just to die. This didn't make sense. However, the collapse of the Great Tao, the fall of the heavenly cry, and the rain of blood couldn't fool him. At any rate, he was a king realm expert, yet he'd really perished today. Could it be that something happened that he didn't know? Just when the White Armor Emperor escaped into the void, he saw that the surface of the big mussel was suddenly covered with a layer of seaweed that looked like ivy. Countless green vines stretched out from the cracks of the big mussel. Mu Wu Hua. How dare you leave the Sea of Clouds divine tree? Puff. The White Armor Emperor vomited another mouthful of blood. Just now, the water fairy's self-explosion had really injured him, causing his strength to drop too much. He probably wouldn't be able to recover without 10 years. As for his companion's spirit, the big mussel, it would be impossible for him to recover without 100 years. But at this time, Mu Wu Hua came. The White Armor Emperor didn't expect that the Life Queen would know about the chaos in the demon-subduing tower in advance. His first thought was that the fall of a king had shocked the entire waterwood heaven. If he were Mu Wu Hua, he would definitely come to the White Shell Royal City to investigate the situation as soon as possible. There was no other reason. He was the only one in the waterwood heaven who wasn't a demon plant king. The one in the Blood Sea Divine Wood City had the advantage of terrain. Mu Wu Hua would definitely be afraid and wouldn't dare to go rashly. The Life Queen shouted softly, life deprivation. In an instant, the White Armor Emperor and the Big Muscle rushed out of the void. The Big Muscle's aura suddenly weakened by 30%. It was first bombarded by a king, and then by Mu Wuhua's sneak attack. The White Armor Emperor was furious. With a thought, he took back the Big Muscle. He held a green jade spear in his hand, pierced through the void, and shattered the strange life-devouring technique with one strike. The White Armor Emperor shouted, Mu Wuhua, aren't you afraid that that guy will go to your Cloud Sea Divine Wood? Mu Wuhua chuckled. You seem to be seriously injured. If I were him, I would come to kill you. In the void, a dull voice said, don't involve me in the battle between the two of you. This has nothing to do with me. However, I would like to ask, since both of you are not dead, who is the one who died? Could it be that a sea expansion stage creature came out of the Wall of Death? The White Armor Emperor and Mu Wuhua fought together and shouted, why should I tell you the internal affairs of the White Shell Royal City? You only need to know that I'm still alive. The Life Queen smiled slyly. Could it be that someone in your White Shell Royal City secretly broke through and became a king, but he couldn't resist and died, causing the heavens to cry? This was the excuse that the Life Queen had long thought of to give the White Armor Emperor. In fact, the Life Queen had some guesses about this matter. Looking at the demon-subduing tower that was almost blasted into the Wall of Death, the Life Queen finally knew where the Water Fairy's main body was imprisoned. However, what surprised her was that Han Fei's efficiency was a bit too high. How long had it been? It hadn't even been half a year. Not only did he sneak into the White Shell Royal City, but he also found the Water Fairy and caused such a big trouble. The Life Queen didn't believe that the Water Fairy had died. Only demonic plants knew demonic plants better. The lifespan of demonic plants was very, very long. The Water Fairy had survived for so long, so there was no reason for it to die. Therefore, at this moment, the Water Fairy had died, which might also mean a new life. At this moment, even she was curious. What benefits did Han Fei get from the Water Fairy? What happened during this period of time? The battle between the Life Queen and the White Armor Emperor lasted only half an hour. After roughly understanding the White Armor Emperor's injuries, she said in a voice that spread in all directions, all the venerables who escaped from the suppression of the White Shell Royal City, the Waterwood Heaven welcomes you. It's up to you whether you want to come or not. With that said, Mu Wuhua looked at the White Armor Emperor. Did that person die in the tower? The Waterwood Heaven wants a share of the opportunities there. The one from the Blood Sea Divine Wood City just said that he wouldn't get involved. At this moment, seeing the miserable appearance of the demon-subduing tower, he couldn't help but add, everyone who sees it has a share. The Blood Sea Divine Wood City naturally has a share too. The White Armor Emperor's face was extremely ugly. He really wanted to tear these two bastards apart. In this battle, the White Shell Royal City suffered heavy losses. The White Armor Emperor himself lost 2 sea-quelling bizarre treasures. After destroying a demon-subduing tower, his associated spirit was seriously injured, and he wouldn't be able to recover for 100 years. However, hearing that both parties wanted the opportunities in the tower, the White Armor Emperor sneered in his heart and thought, how can the opportunities in the demon-subduing tower be so easy to get? Since you want it, then send someone over. However, the White Armor Emperor said, of course. However, the remaining power here is still strong. If you want to fight for this opportunity, let's talk about it in 10 years. Chapter 1306. The battle in the demon-suppressing tower this time was not really a battle between kings. Although the power that erupted in the end was completely at the level of a king, it was not enough, as could be seen from the White Armor Emperor's injuries. If the kings fought head-on, even if the White Armor Emperor and the Life Queen fought each other, the result would only be more serious. Although the White Armor Emperor still didn't understand why the one in the tower attacked. Or, the other party still had a chance to survive. When the battle was over, the White Armor Emperor had some speculations, but they were just speculations. In the demon-suppressing tower, Han Fei lowered his head and looked at his lotus body, only to see his shoulders glowing brightly. With 2 puffs, 2 more heads and 4 arms grew out of his body. Ha! It doesn't feel strange at all. In this way, I don't need little fatty anymore. I can also look around and attack in all directions. In the distance, a silver light brought a fish, striking horizontally like a long sword. In other words, only the monsters on the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th floors really ran out after the demon-suppressing tower shook. The 7th, 8th, and 9th floors were all the top masters, and there were only 5 or 6 of them, including the water fairy. The rest were all venerables on the 6th floor. However, not all of them ran out. Only about half of them had time to run out. Then, the passage was shattered by the battle between the White Armor Emperor and the Water Fairy. As for the 6th floor and above, there might be 1 or 2 space cracks that appeared occasionally. However, the creatures who could seize that opportunity to get out were completely lucky. All in all, there might be less than 10 of them. Because most of the creatures saw the hope of getting out, but they couldn't really run out, so they rioted. It could even be said that they were a little crazy now. For example, at this moment, Han Fei, as a stranger, had already been targeted by many creatures. Although Han Fei had come in the appearance of the Fish Dragon King before. However, these creatures didn't know that they didn't think that Han Fei and the Fish Dragon King were the same person at this moment, so they naturally attacked again. Han Fei grinned. What a stupid creature. It seems that the long imprisonment has made you lose your intuition for danger. Han Fei stretched out his hands, and 2 sledgehammers appeared in his hands. Han Fei was about to use the 100 Wars hammer, but as soon as he attacked, he immediately found that something was wrong. The 100 Battles godly hammer wasn't as smooth as before. However, he couldn't care so much during a battle. Even if it was not easy, Han Fei did not forget how to fight. Just based on the basics, these creatures couldn't compare. Bang bang bang. In the water, ripples of light were shaking, and the silver ribbonfish was knocked askew by Han Fei 3 times in a row. In an instant, it exploded. Han Fei roared, "From now on, wherever I, Han Fei, go, stay away. Otherwise, kill them." Han Fei was extremely arrogant and didn't care what these creatures thought. Baibei Royal City, Forbidden Trial Grounds, Lightning Prison. When Han Fei appeared again, his injuries had been completely healed. Some kind of electric arc flashed. There weren't many expressions of joy on his face. He said with a gloomy face, "You have a powerful soul for many years, but your soul power is so small. How pathetic." This time, after devouring all the ownerless souls, Han Fei's soul power only increased by about 1,200 points. Now, his soul power totaled 15,788 points. He wasn't weak, but he wasn't strong either. At least, in Han Fei's opinion, this number might not be as powerful as some so-called peerless heavenly talents. The old turtle said, "You've taken advantage of me. It's not difficult to make up for your soul. This time, you acted rashly, and being able to come out safely is already commendable." His soul was weakened. Although Han Fei was in the lightning prison, he didn't deliberately cultivate his body. Instead, he was visualizing the God-scaring painting. This time, part of the God-scaring painting had been unlocked, and the power and charm of the God-scaring thorn needed to be improved. In a few days, he would leave the Forbidden Trial Grounds, so he had to find a way to escape. Although there were still 2 forbidden grounds waiting for him in the Baibei Royal City, the ancient seed transformed by the Water Immortal was still here. The battle in the Yin-Yang Heaven was quite urgent. If he mistakenly entered a forbidden mystic realm like the Yao Ceiling Pagoda, then no one would help him. Would he be able to come out? That was the question. On this day, Yu Tianxin reopened the forbidden secret realm. His first reaction was to look in the direction of the demon ceiling tower. Seeing that the cave leading to the demon ceiling tower didn't change, Yu Tianxin was slightly relieved. He had heard about what happened a few days ago. The Battle of Kings broke out, and the demon ceiling tower was almost smashed into the wall of death. none of the creatures guarding the Yao ceiling pagoda survived. Thinking of this, Yu Tianxin couldn't help but shake his head. It seems that this secret realm is doomed. Behind Yu Tianxin, Chang Shuai-Qin suddenly appeared, looking calm. Chang Shuai-Qin said lightly, "Has the fish dragon king come out?" Yu Tianxin shook his head. "Not yet." Chang Shuai-Qin nodded and looked in the direction of the demon ceiling tower. "It's a pity that not many people can enter." "What a pity." Swish. While Chang Shuai-Qin was sighing, Han Fei walked out of the thunder dungeon with lightning arcs bouncing on his body, looking exhausted. Seeing Han Fei, Yu Tianxin was shocked and asked in surprise, "You stayed in there for a whole month?" Han Fei didn't respond to Yu Tianxin but maintained a cold posture. Chang Shuai-Qin, on the other hand, noticed the problem first. He said, "Your soul seems to be unstable. What did you encounter in there?" Han Fei pretended to narrow his eyes and said respectfully, "I met a small snake in the lightning that could control lightning. The Dragon King was almost killed by the snake. Although I managed to escape, my soul was damaged." Han Fei looked awful when he spoke, as if he had suffered a great loss. However, Yu Tianxin asked in surprise, "You met the spirit of the Thunder Heritage?" Confused, Han Fei tilted his head and looked at Yu Tianxin. "Huh?" Yu Tianxin said, "It's an extremely rare creature that lives in the depths of the Thunder Dungeon. It's a great tonic for body refinement. Of course, that's if you can withstand it." Han Fei frowned. "It can also hurt the soul." Chang Shuai-Qin said casually, "The spirit of the Thunder Heritage is pure yang energy that can suppress souls and other things. However, since you survived, it also shows that you have potential. When you go out, I can help you get a share of soul crystals, which will be less ownerless souls." Han Fei was surprised to hear that. Han Fei was refreshed. "Thank you, my lord." Chang Shuai-Qin said casually, "Don't thank me yet. You will definitely receive a lot of attention when you go out. Everyone is waiting to see what rank you can get. Including me." Han Fei chuckled. "I want to see my ranking too." Chang Shuai-Qin nodded slightly. "Go ahead." After Han Fei left the forbidden area, Chang Shuai-Qin slightly shook his head. "It's a pity that I didn't improve my level 9 demon heritage." For Chang Shuai-Qin, it didn't matter how much Han Fei's strength and body had grown. If Han Fei's demon heritage could improve further, it would be worthy of his attention. Unfortunately, Han Fei didn't make it. This caused many people's expectations to relax. In the Baibei royal city, heavenly talents were fighting in the sky. Because 2 of the top 10 places on the heavenly talent roll had been eliminated. So, 2 more people came in to replace them. However, the strength of the replacements couldn't be recognized by everyone. So, people kept challenging them. It was only today that the 9th place was barely confirmed. The 10th place had changed 3 times. At this moment, a lobster demon and a clam girl were fighting for the 10th place. Down below, many people were watching the battle too. Maybe because it was boring, or maybe because it was the heavenly talent roll of the Baibei royal city, many people were watching. Except for the top 3, almost all the people on the heavenly talent roll were here. Of course, the fish dragon king was missing, so he naturally became the topic of everyone's discussion. Someone said, "How long has the fish dragon king been in there?" "More than a month." "After such a long time, he should have died, right?" Someone shook his head slightly. "I don't think so. If the fish dragon king dies, there should be 3 vacancies on the heavenly talent roll. In that case, he won't be fighting for the 9th and 10th places." Someone sneered. "Who cares if he can survive? Among the top 10 heavenly talents, the fish dragon king is the one I hate the most. His status is not that high, but everyone seems to owe him 80,000 caddies of spiritual spring." On the other side, Pran Yue yawned and said, "The fish dragon king is not dead. It seems that he made a big breakthrough this time." Qing Xiling asked, "If he made a big breakthrough, wouldn't you be in danger?" Prawn Yue said indifferently, I don't really care. You and little Tian are in danger. As Prawn Yue spoke, a black-headed half-mermaid carrying a black iron rod said, this time, it's my turn to fight the Fish Dragon King, isn't it? Qing Xiling couldn't help but smile. Umbrella 7, don't underestimate the current Fish Dragon King. In my opinion, it seems that you have no chance of winning. This person was the guy who ranked 7th on the Heavenly Talent roll. Another big black fish was born. Suddenly, there was a commotion in the distance. Someone exclaimed, look, the Fish Dragon King is out. The moment Han Fei came out, he noticed that someone was fighting. He also noticed that Prawn Yue and the others were standing together. A battle between heavenly talents would happen sooner or later. According to the Fish Dragon King's character, he would definitely fight as soon as he came out. Therefore, Han Fei took the initiative to provoke him, saying in a distant voice, Umbrella 7, do you dare to fight me? Chapter 1307. When Han Fei shouted, a phantom appeared in Forge the Universe, like a curtain, showing the scene above the Baibei royal city at this moment. Han Fei said, Fish Dragon King, is this scene familiar? The Fish Dragon King was shocked, widened his eyes, and exclaimed, this is the Baibei royal city. This is Umbrella 7. Han Fei grinned. Don't panic. I'll show you what a heavenly talent you are today. The Fish Dragon King was dumbfounded. What is Han Fei doing? When Han Fei shouted at Umbrella 7, in the battlefield above, the shrimp soldier's spear pierced through the void like a waterfall and knocked back the clam girl with a clang. The clam girl tried to control the shrimp soldier with spiritual lines, but the shrimp soldier's long whiskers broke the spell and cut off a piece of invisible silk lines. Immediately, a turtle prime minister shouted, Master Suyi wins. The 10th place on the heavenly talent list belongs to Master Suyi. But when the turtle prime minister shouted, he had already glanced at Han Fei. Compared with the battle for the top 10, the Fish Dragon King, who had just come out of the forbidden trial field, was what everyone really wanted to see. Although some people paid attention to Su Ye's advancement, more people exclaimed when they saw the Fish Dragon King. What? The Fish Dragon King has come out. Oh my god. He actually passed the Forbidden Land trial. Wow. This battle is going to be interesting. With the Fish Dragon King's character, there will be a series of battles. I wonder what kind of fortuitous encounter he obtained in the Forbidden Trial grounds. Is he confident to defeat Master Shrimp Yue this time? Someone guessed, probably not. After all, he only went to the Forbidden Trial field once. No matter how great the opportunities he got were, he couldn't have improved so quickly, could he? The black-faced Umbrella 7 was annoyed by Han Fei's shout. This bastard, challenging me as soon as he came out. In the past, he didn't take the Fish Dragon King seriously. But since he came out of the secret realm, he heard that the Fish Dragon King and Shrimp Yue had a tie. This surprised him greatly. He thought to himself, did the Fish Dragon King improve so much? Now, Han Fei was being so arrogant. How could he lose face? So, you think you can really beat me just because you just passed the Forbidden Area trial field? Humph. A cold and gloomy aura emanated from Umbrella 7's body. He pointed the big black rod in his hand at Han Fei. Fish Dragon King, you want to show off as soon as you come out. Aren't you a little too anxious? Han Fei sneered. I don't have much time. Since all of you are here today, I might as well challenge them. Umbrella 7, let me ask you, do you dare to fight or not? His dignity as a powerhouse, as a top Heaven's favorite ranked 7th on the Heaven's favorite roll, did not allow him to reject this challenge. Therefore, Umbrella 7 took a step into the air, and the black iron rod in his hand opened up with a whoosh, turning into a big black umbrella that spiraled upward. Sanchi said, Fish Dragon King, I know you have a great opportunity. However, don't be too arrogant. Otherwise, it will be ugly later on, and no one will clean up the mess for you. Roar! A golden dragon circled him and then soared into the sky. Han Fei became more and more arrogant. Even in the Bei royal city, he didn't restrain himself at all. In Forge the Universe, the Fish Dragon King was completely dumbfounded. This bastard not only used his identity but also challenged Umbrella 7. Fuck. Although he was arrogant, he knew his limits. With his strength, there was still a gap between him and Umbrella 7. Why did Han Fei help him fight for a ranking? In the outside world, among the heavenly talents who were watching the battle, the corners of Qing Si Ling's mouth were slightly raised, revealing an extremely beautiful smile. It seems that the Fish Dragon King's strength has improved a lot in this forbidden trial. Prawn Yue looked a little more serious. If that's the case, then I'd like to see how much stronger he is compared to a month ago. As for the bald Zhang Xiaotian, he didn't speak. He seemed to be watching a show. He was also very curious about which forbidden trial did Han Fei go to. After all, Han Fei was the only one who had gone to a forbidden trial field in the past few years. Therefore, his return immediately attracted the attention of most people in the Bei royal city. However, even though Han Fei released his divine senses, he still noticed that there were a lot fewer masters who were perceiving him. Among them, Han Fei was more certain that Hai Tinglei was not there. The number of Venerable Realm Masters scanning him was less than half of the number when he came to the Bei royal city last time. Han Fei said calmly, "Old Yuan, the number of Venerables in the Bei royal city has decreased by more than half, right?" Han Fei's heart slightly trembled, and he thought to himself, if the water fairy killed half of the Venerables in the Bei royal city, then I've done the Life Queen a big favor this time. At least, I can pay off the debt I owe her. Otherwise, it doesn't seem right for a senior brother to owe a junior sister a huge debt. Also, the next time I return to the Shuemu heaven, shouldn't I, as a senior brother, give some greeting gifts to my junior sister? But the problem is, do I have any fucking good stuff on me? Han Fei was immediately in a dilemma. He thought to himself, it's really not easy to be a senior brother to this extent. Han Fei wasn't thinking about fighting at all. His eyes were wandering, as if he didn't take Umbrella 7 seriously at all. The old turtle said, "I don't think so. There should be a lot of Venerables in the Bei royal city." Han Fei was surprised. How is that possible? I can detect the perception of a Venerable. The old turtle immediately sneered. What's the point of detecting the perception of a Venerable? I'm looking at the heavenly secrets. Your divination art is still far from that. Otherwise, you would have found that the heavenly secrets of the Bei royal city are still strong. This means that during the battle in the Demon Ceiling Tower, your master's last attack didn't kill many people. However, the old turtle immediately added, however, the sacrificial attack of a king is not so easy to block. If I'm not mistaken, half of the experts in the Bei royal city should be recovering at this moment. Including the king of the Bei royal city, he should also be recovering. So, he just doesn't have time to deal with you. Han Fei's expression changed slightly. How many people was injured by the water fairy's sacrificial attack? Han Fei quickly came back to his senses and said slowly, "It's a pity. The Demon Ceiling Tower must have blocked my master's attack. Otherwise, half of the Bei royal city would have been destroyed." The old turtle said, "It's a good thing that no one is paying attention to you. You should have done most of the things you should have done. If you deal with it well this time, you'll have to find an excuse to leave this place when everything is calm." Suddenly, there was a sound. "Fish Dragon King, let me see what kind of fortuitous encounter you have. What makes you so arrogant?" Han Fei was chatting with the old turtle when he was interrupted by Umbrella 7. This person was holding a big black umbrella, which looked very weird. Han Fei snorted and ignored Umbrella 7. He looked down at Prawn Yue and said, "You're next." Prawn Yue said casually, "You win first." Seeing that Han Fei ignored him, Umbrella 7 was furious. "I'm the 7th on the heavenly talent list, and this is how you treat me? Confinement of heaven and earth." In the sky, a black umbrella descended like a mountain, and the umbrella ribs were like pillars, trying to block the space where Han Fei was. However, for Han Fei, who had already comprehended the mysteries of space, he stomped on the ground and stepped into the void with the fish dragon dance, and then he used ground bending. In the eyes of outsiders, Han Fei seemed to have drawn a semicircle in the air and avoided the confinement. So fast. The faces of Prawn Yue and the others changed slightly. Han Fei's speed was even faster, and his understanding of the law of space was deeper. That was not all. At the moment Han Fei flashed out, the red spear in his hand pierced through the void. At this moment, Han Fei used momentary time and so close, yet worlds apart. It's a soul attack. Zhang Xiaotian only had time to say this, when he saw Umbrella 7's hand shaking. He didn't even have time to react. He saw a black light descend from the edge of the umbrella like a veil. This veil also tried to block Han Fei's attack. Umbrella 7. Puff. Umbrella 7 was blasted dozens of kilometers away. His big black umbrella was really of good quality. It had the same freakish characteristics as Little Fatty, which could block spiritual attacks and physical attacks. However, no matter how strong this umbrella was, it had its limits. Han Fei's strength had improved after being tempered in the Thunder Prison for more than a month. How could Umbrella 7 block it so easily? Bam! Another hole was drilled through the black veil curtain. God's stunning stab. Hum. Umbrella 7's body stiffened. Han Fei used distance reduction and launched another spear attack at close range. Without giving him a chance to react, the instant mystic spear drilled through the hole again. Puff! Umbrella 7's body was penetrated by Han Fei's spear. Half of his body was blasted apart, and he fell straight down from the sky. This scene dumbfounded the Turtle Prime Minister, who was in charge of refereeing. How long had the fight been going on? This was just a face-to-face confrontation. The whole fight lasted less than 2 minutes, and Umbrella 7 was defeated. Hiss, there was a dead silence, and then there was a buzz. Someone was shocked. What kind of technique is this? Umbrella 7's black umbrella couldn't even withstand 2 shots from the Ichthyosaur King before it was pierced. Someone was dumbfounded. What kind of opportunities are there in the Forbidden Land trial field? But Xin Yue and the others looked grave. Xin Yue said, he seems to have comprehended the closed distance technique to a higher level. Zhang Xiaotian nodded. Yes. Although his law of time hasn't improved, I feel that his soul attack is stronger than last time. Shen Yue said, tsk. Interesting. Qingxi Ling, if I lose, you two can keep the top 5 places yourselves. The Fish Dragon King was the most surprised. When he saw that Han Fei, who was playing the role of himself, defeated Umbrella 7 in an instant, he had mixed feelings. Is this guy so strong? Why can he even imitate my close-distance technique? Different from what Xin Yue and the others saw, when Han Fei performed the soul-stunning spike this time, he found that he could fully use his current soul power. Perhaps because of his understanding of the God-scaring painting, the soul-stunning spike in its 70% state was even stronger than when he performed it before. However, Han Fei clearly knew that he had to find a way to leave the Baibei royal city. Therefore, he couldn't keep winning. Otherwise, if he attracted more and more attention and was trained as a core seed, it would be troublesome for him to leave. However, this was the Fish Dragon King's personality. If he didn't show off and be arrogant, he might expose himself. He had already begun to act, so he had to keep acting. Standing proudly in the void, Han Fei pointed his spear at Xin Yue and Qingxi Ling, saying, if the Fish Dragon King hadn't been born, spear arts would have been like a long night. Today, I'm going to expose your undefeatable myth with my spear. Xin Yue, come and fight me. Xin Yue, in Forge the Universe. The Fish Dragon King. First update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1308. It was as if defeating Umbrella 7 was just an insignificant opponent. Han Fei didn't even bother to look at him. After all, for Han Fei, the so-called sea spirit heavenly talents didn't arouse his strong desire to fight anymore. Even if he suppressed his realm, he still felt that it was a dimensional reduction. Han Fei pointed at Prawn Yue and said arrogantly, which made many venerables droop their eyelids. They had no idea how this bastard could grow so fast. How did he become so strong? Damn it, can't you be a little more shameless? You were born to be the Fish Dragon King, and your spear is like a long night? How the hell can you say that? Countless people were speechless, thinking, maybe the Fish Dragon King has become stronger, but his arrogance is also stronger than before. The Fish Dragon King was a bit embarrassed. Am I really like this? I, the Fish Dragon King, may be a little arrogant, but I won't say anything that comes out of my mouth. The Fish Dragon King roared, Han Fei, you shameless villain, you are a fake. Han Fei's voice rippled. Shut up. If you yell again, I'll chop you into pieces. Now, the entire Baibei royal city knows that the Fish Dragon King has obtained great luck in the Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm. To tell you the truth, I just helped you pass the trial field of the Forbidden Area. You should be happy. Huh? The Fish Dragon King was stunned. Trial field of the Forbidden Area? Are you fucking kidding me? Am I strong enough to go to the trial field of the Forbidden Area? In the outside world. Hearing Han Fei's words, someone said disdainfully, this guy is too pretentious. I really hope he dies in the Forbidden Area. Someone said helplessly, confidence comes from strength. He must have a certain level of confidence in his own strength. Otherwise, how dare he say such a thing? Prawn Yue flew in the air and chuckled. It seems that you have gained a lot from this trial. Han Fei grinned, revealing his teeth. I used to be a hidden dragon in the abyss, but now I have risen. It's time for me to change my position as a heavenly talent. Chilla. Before the Turtle Prime Minister shouted, suddenly, the two of them attacked almost at the same time. Prawn Yue's 6 spears pierced out and locked Han Fei's front, back, left, and right. Hiss, many people shuddered when they saw Prawn Yue's sudden attack. They thought to themselves, Prawn Yue's strength seems to be even stronger than what he displayed a few days ago. Someone quickly said, could it be that Lord Shrimpy Yue has made a breakthrough? Someone denied, of course not. Previously, Lord Prawn Yue had been ambushed. This time, he was on his guard. The beginning of the battle will naturally be different. However, at the moment when the 6 spears appeared, Han Fei's figure almost turned into a shadow. The dancing fish dragon moved through the gap between the 2 spears. Then, she shook the spear in her hand and twisted it into a circle. Bang! With a shake of the red spear, Han Fei dodged all the spears and blocked 4 with 1 spear. Han Fei stepped out, stretched out 2 fingers, and used them as a spear. With a flash of fire, time froze, and the ground shrank to an inch. Prawn Yue seemed to have expected that Han Fei would make such a move. He had already made a judgment in advance and dodged. As he dodged, the 2 thorns on his waist stabbed at him. Ding! Pooh! The 2 of them separated as soon as they touched. The whole process looked like Prawn Yue's attack. Han Fei's body shook. Then, Han Fei appeared in front of Prawn Yue and separated with a single blow. It looked extremely simple. However, in the eyes of those with discerning eyes, they all looked solemn. This kind of battle feeling seemed to have reached the point where his movements were as agile as an immortal's. The 2 of them retreated as soon as they touched, and Prawn Yue touched his neck with his hand. There was a red scratch there. On the other hand, Han Fei was holding half of a spear in his hand and blocking his pair of daggers. Let's see the real deal in silence. Prawn Yue narrowed his eyes and stared at Han Fei for a long time. Fish Dragon King, you surprised me. I didn't expect you to be so meticulous. Fine, you win this battle. With that, Prawn Yue directly landed, and many people were dumbfounded. The Turtle Prime Minister was stunned for a while and then shouted, in this battle, Master Fish Dragon King challenges Master Prawn Yue. Master Fish Dragon King wins. Huh? Wow. Are you kidding me? That's it? Many people were dumbfounded. Who the fuck are you kidding? The two of them only collided and both looked unscathed. How could the winner be decided? In Forge the Universe, the Fish Dragon King who was watching a movie stared blankly at this moment. Han Fei's strength is so terrifying. He defeated Prawn Yue in just one round. Wait, what else does Han Fei want to do? Does he want to continue to fight? Defeat the Green Silk Spirit and Zhang Xiaotian? The Fish Dragon King's eyes widened. Fuck, even if Han Fei lets me go, how can I go back to the Baibei Royal City? Even when I was at my peak, I couldn't even enter the top 5. If I show up in the future, won't I be exposed? Besides, why did Han Fei deliberately show me what happened outside? What's his purpose? While the Fish Dragon King was lost in thought, a heated discussion had already begun outside. A Tao-seeking state creature said, the top 10 masters on the heavenly talent list definitely won't have a life-and-death battle. However, the Fish Dragon King had a slight edge in the battle just now when the two of them were competing on the details. Don't underestimate such a small detail. In a real battle, you may be killed. The Green Silk Spirit stopped laughing and said casually, interesting. He's trying to defeat us one by one. Zhang Xiaotian said, he's very strong. Be careful. In the distance, Changshui Qin and Yu Tianxin were watching the battlefield. Yu Tianxin was a little surprised. His movement technique has improved, his strength has increased, and his understanding of the law of space has deepened. Although his soul has been damaged, his control over it seems to have improved. Yu Tianxin couldn't help but frown. Is this something that can be achieved in the lightning prison? Yu Tianxin couldn't help but ask, did he secretly go to other forbidden areas during the month? For example, the Well of the Abyss, the Divine Demon Sea, or the Demon Ceiling Tower? Changshui Qin was silent for a while and slightly shook his head. I don't think so. First of all, he can't go to the Demon Ceiling Tower or the Divine Demon Sea. You didn't give him a spatial rune. How can he come out after going in? Besides, such a big thing happened in the Demon Ceiling Tower, and the spatial channel must be full of dangers. He will definitely die if he enters it rashly. As for the Divine Demon Sea, it's even more dangerous. But if he survives, it's possible for his strength to soar. However, I don't think the Fish Dragon King is capable of that. As for the Well of the Abyss, it doesn't matter if he goes there or not. Maybe it's just an opportunity that he got. This time, he just consolidated and absorbed it. Yu Tianxin slightly nodded. His judgment was similar. No matter how strong the Fish Dragon King was, there should be a limit. At this moment, Han Fei looked at the Green Silk Spirit and grinned. Chatterbox, do you want to come? The Green Silk Spirit was a bit talkative. Now that Han Fei called her a chatterbox, she was slightly infuriated. She snorted arrogantly. Fish Dragon King, don't you want to save some face for yourself? Han Fei grinned. I earned my face with my own hands. You used to think that I wasn't strong enough to rank 10th on the heavenly talent list. Now that I've defeated the top 5, let me ask you, do you feel ashamed? Han Fei knew that this woman couldn't be weak. But no matter how strong she was, it was all relative. For him now, no matter how strong she wasn't strong at all. If he couldn't beat these people even with a dimensional reduction attack, it could only mean that he was too useless. After so many ups and downs, he couldn't even beat an ordinary heavenly talent. At least, the Green Silk Spirit wasn't out of his plan. He needed to raise the Fish Dragon King's reputation to the highest level and then fall. Only by rising and falling could he find a reason to leave. Therefore, from the beginning, Han Fei's target was Zhang Xiaotian, the little baldy who seemed to be aloof from worldly affairs. Han Fei pointed his spear at the Green Silk Spirit. My time is limited. You can either fight me or get out of my way. The Green Silk Spirit put on a fake smile and said, you want to fight with little Tian? Well, let me tell you. You're not really invincible just because you've passed the trial field of the Forbidden Land. The green silk spirit walked in the air as if she were stepping on layers of ice. As she moved her hands, Han Fei saw that wherever his eyes passed, there were lines everywhere. These lines left a deep impression on Han Fei. They were a bit like the lines of light of the woman who once intercepted him in the ideal palace. Not only the lines, but the arrangement of these lines seemed to be some kind of array, causing the scenery in front of Han Fei to change. More importantly, Han Fei couldn't use the yin-yang divine eyes at this moment, could he? However, just because he couldn't use the yin-yang divine eyes didn't mean that Han Fei couldn't do anything. The dragon roar reverberated, and a terrifying soul power swept across the surrounding dozens of kilometers. This was a real dragon roar, which Han Fei had heard with his own ears. In order to match the dragon roar, Han Fei even projected a dragon shadow. Puff! The green silk spirit vomited blood and said in shock, "Why is the coverage so large? What kind of attack is this?" Han Fei shouted, "I'll let you know that the Dragon King's bloodline has been awakened again. From now on, in the Baibei Royal City, the Fish Dragon King will be a new legend." In Forge the Universe, the real Fish Dragon King opened his mouth and widened his eyes. After a long time, he said tremblingly, "It's over. I can't go back to the Baibei Royal City." Second update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1309. Han Fei had fully demonstrated the other uses of the 100 Beasts soul-suppressing roar. Apart from anything else, this technique was based on the roars of hundreds of beasts. No matter who listened to it, they would only think that this technique was like this and wouldn't find out that Han Fei was faking it. After all, the beasts in the sea could also roar. This green silk spirit didn't expect that Han Fei's soul attack could be indiscriminate. Therefore, with a moment of carelessness, he directly fell for it. However, this woman was not a simple character. She vomited a mouthful of blood, and her eyes turned white. A spiritual attack also rushed straight to Han Fei's mind. However, although Han Fei's soul was almost halved, his soul was already several times stronger than others. So, with just a tingling in his head, he immediately shattered the attack. However, as soon as he shattered the impact, Han Fei found that there was an ocean of silk threads in front of him. As far as his eyes could see, there were silk threads everywhere. Except for silk threads, there was nothing else. Then, Han Fei saw that in the silk threads in all directions, hundreds of big crabs, sea spiders, sea silkworms, starfish, worms, and so on pouncing at him. When he saw these things, the corner of Han Fei's mouth twitched. "I hate bugs the most. You sent a bunch of fake bugs to attack me? Do you think that's enough?" Puff! Han Fei waved his hand casually. Although he felt a lot of resistance, there seemed to be silk threads entangling his arm. In addition, a bunch of wriggling bugs were exploding. However, the moment those bugs exploded, Han Fei's pupils suddenly constricted. Are these bugs actually souls? Or undead creatures? Han Fei immediately thought of Li Luoluo. When he had already fled the Thousand-Star City, Li Luoluo didn't come out of the ideal palace. The method of this green silk spirit was quite similar to Li Luoluo's. Li Luoluo was also good at illusions and could summon a large number of colorful and strange bugs. Now it seemed that Li Luoluo was also using her soul power to control the bugs. However, what Li Luoluo controlled were entities, while this green silk spirit controlled illusory creatures that didn't exist. On all sides, many people looked at the arena above the white shell kingdom that was almost covered in white. The dense threads caused many people's scalps to go numb. Regardless of which race it was, the most annoying ones were those prodigies who possessed exceptionally powerful divine souls and were proficient in all kinds of illusions, and enchantment spells. The corner of someone's mouth twitched as he said, "Although it's rare to see Lady Qingxi Ling in action, it's still extremely shocking every time. It seems that those who oppose Lord Qingxi Ling have all become her puppets." Someone said with some fear, "It would be good if he could be a puppet. At least he would have a physical body. I've heard that the souls of those who fall under Lord Green Silk Spirit's hands will never be liberated. Prawn Yue looked up at the scene and said calmly, "How will the Fish Dragon King retaliate?" Zhang Xiaotian said indifferently, "The key is to break the illusion and find the azure silk spirit." Suddenly, a red spear shadow appeared in the sky. It was like a sword that could slash the heavens. It actually slashed out a red mark in the surrounding 10 miles. The scene was like an extremely enormous cloud being sliced into two by a bright red line, and it was extremely direct as if it had broken out of a cocoon. Humph! Han Fei snorted and slashed with the Monkey King's 3,000 strikes technique. As a result, after the red crack, the silken space that was like a huge white cocoon was instantly sliced into pieces. Han Fei grinned. Spear arts can also be used to slash. Green silk spirit, take it. Han Fei slashed more than 200 times in the space. At first, it seemed that he missed every attack. However, after only 30 attacks, sparks flashed in the air, and two whips were colliding with the spear shadows. The azure silk spirit's face changed greatly. How did the Fish Dragon King see through her? Also, what kind of spear art is the Fish Dragon King using? One wave after another, and there were 200 waves in total. The power at this moment had completely exceeded the limit of her resistance. Crack! One of the long whips was smashed into pieces. The azure silk spirit appeared. The moment she appeared, she stretched out her hand and grabbed at the void, as if she were holding a handful of threads. However, when she was about to borrow strength, Han Fei had already stepped on her escape route. Bam! Puff! Han Fei held the spear backhand and slapped it, sending the azure silk spirit flying out of the battlefield, blood spurting out wildly. In Forge the Universe, the Fish Dragon King, who watched the whole battle, opened his mouth wide. The more ridiculous Han Fei's achievements were, the more he couldn't go back. Otherwise, he would definitely be seen through. After all, half of the people in the city had seen it. If he came back, there would be many heavenly talents looking for him to spar with. How could he refuse this spar? Wouldn't he be exposed? What could he say then? That someone pretended to be him. Once he found out that he had been replaced, what did Han Fei do in the Baibei royal city for so long? God knew what his relationship with Han Fei was. No matter what the reason was, his superiors wouldn't let him go. No matter how stupid the Fish Dragon King was, he knew why Han Fei showed him this scene, which was to tell him, don't even think about the Baibei royal city. You can't go back in this life. In the future, be obedient and maybe you can live. After being detained for such a long time, the Fish Dragon King was even a little disheartened. At this moment, looking at Han Fei who used his own appearance to fight outside, he was a little fascinated. The Fish Dragon King thought to himself, really, he's so strong. In the outside world, everyone was shocked. Someone exclaimed, how is it possible? Master Azure Silk Spirit was defeated? So strong. What's the so-called bloodline awakening of the Fish Dragon King? He suddenly rose from the 10th place to the 5th place on the heavenly talent list. Is it really that amazing? Many Tao-seeking state demons were tempted, and some people were already standing in front of the Fish Dragon King's residence. At present, the rise of the Fish Dragon King was unstoppable. Besides, this person was very proud. If he flattered him, he would definitely help him in the future. The turtle who acted as the referee swallowed and slightly shrank his neck. In this battle, Master Fish Dragon King challenges Master Azure Silk Spirit. Master Fish Dragon King wins. In Han Fei's heart, the old turtle said, what if that little baldy is not as strong as you think? If you defeat this baldy, then you will be the first on the so-called heavenly talent list. By then, it will be difficult for you to run away. Han Fei replied, I'm not wrong. The Fish Dragon King once fought with this person and was suppressed by Zhang Xiaotian with one hand. It didn't even have a chance to resist. This person is extremely strong in every aspect. Although I seem to be very strong now, my strength is only on par with Prawn Yue and Azure Silk Spirit. The gap is not very big. The old turtle said, I'm just reminding you not to screw up. Han Fei stood proudly in the void and sneered. Since I've already fought, I'll cultivate in seclusion and then fight in the trial field of the Forbidden Land. Zhang Xiaotian, why don't you fight me? Zhang Xiaotian scratched his head. Okay. Wow, the audience was in an uproar. Although Zhang Xiaotian didn't refuse anyone, the Fish Dragon King challenged him this time, which meant a lot. Zhang Xiaotian didn't refuse anyone. Anyone could challenge him at any level or rank. But the premise was that he had to be in the royal city. Many of them challenged Zhang Xiaotian just to get a taste of his strength. But today, the Fish Dragon King was different. He fought his way up one by one, from the 10th place all the way to the 4th place, and even killed 2 people. This strength was enough for the Fish Dragon King to be taken seriously. Zhang Xiaotian stretched out his hand and tore the void apart. In the next second, Han Fei saw the void crack 100 meters away was torn apart, and Zhang Xiaotian appeared. Han Fei's pupils constricted. A peak-level sea spirit tearing the void apart. This strength could be measured by the Tao-seeking state. Zhang Xiaotian glanced at Han Fei casually. You've become a lot stronger. Come on. Han Fei pretended to be angry. Last time, I was indeed no match for you. This time, this Dragon King will naturally fight with all his might. Then Han Fei really didn't hold back. He stepped forward with the close-distance technique and launched a soul-stunning spike. Swish! Zhang Xiaotian stretched out his hand and grabbed, tearing open several spatial cracks. Han Fei was shocked and subconsciously wanted to use the star teleportation technique and the flash ability. But he held back. As the Fish Dragon King, he had limited means and couldn't use those unconventional means. Huh! The dragon roared again, and Han Fei launched 2 soul attacks at Zhang Xiaotian. His own close-distance technique couldn't react fast enough. He was cut by the void cracks and his battle suit was torn apart. Han Fei frowned and blood flowed out of his body. Of course, it wasn't golden blood, but normal blood that Han Fei had prepared. A big eye appeared above Zhang Xiaotian's head. As soon as he opened his eyes, with 2 bangs, a terrifying soul shock shook the surroundings and easily broke Han Fei's 2 soul attacks. Down below, many people breathed a sigh of relief. Someone laughed. I knew that the Fish Dragon King was no match for Master Zhang Xiaotian. Someone chuckled. Of course, who on the heavenly talent list can fight Master Zhang Xiaotian head-on? A Tao-seeking state demon sighed. Master Zhang Xiaotian is too strong. Such an expert doesn't need followers. What a pity. A venerable state expert shook his head slightly. The Fish Dragon King seems to be much stronger, but it's still not enough. He's only at the same level as Prawn Yu Wei and the Green Silk Spirit. Zhang Xiaotian nodded slightly. His soul power has become much stronger. Both his techniques are very powerful, his speed is several times faster, and his understanding of space is deeper. Now, I believe your bloodline has been awakened again. Otherwise, you wouldn't have become so strong. Han Fei pretended to be furious, as if he didn't believe the current situation. He couldn't help but yell, again. Third. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 13:10. Han Fei pretended to be furious. Zhang Xiaotian looked at Han Fei calmly with a faint smile on his face, as if waiting for Han Fei to continue. Zhang Xiaotian's strength was exactly what Han Fei wanted. This time, he had to be defeated. There were 2 benefits. Firstly, he wouldn't have to take over Zhang Xiaotian's position. Now, even if he was in the eye of the storm, as long as he wasn't the strongest, he wouldn't be targeted by others, just like Qing Xiling and the others. Secondly, he could use this as an excuse to say that he had comprehended a lot, but his experience was not enough and that he needed to go out to train. This way, it would be easier for him to escape. Therefore, the stronger Zhang Xiaotian was, the more difficult the battle would be, which was in line with Han Fei's plan. So, Han Fei fought again. Out of the Monkey King's 3,000 strikes, he only needed to use 300 strikes to prevent himself from accidentally winning. Based on the strength that Zhang Xiaotian had displayed, it was unlikely that his Monkey King 3,000 whips would be able to hit him. Sure enough, even though Han Fei used the closed distance technique, the Monkey King 3,000 strikes, and the God-stunning spike, he could only fight Zhang Xiaotian. Bang bang bang. The people below could see the sounds of explosions coming from the arena from time to time. That was the result of repeated mental attacks colliding with each other. However, unlike the previous times, Han Fei could only defend against Zhang Xiaotian's spiritual shock. Although Han Fei didn't use his strongest soul attack, after a round of battle, Han Fei clearly discovered that even if he went all out, his soul was still slightly weaker than Zhang Xiaotian's. Han Fei couldn't help but be secretly shocked. If his guess was correct, Zhang Xiaotian's soul was almost as strong as his own. This person is extraordinary. Han Fei realized that there were always a few talented people among the billions of creatures. If Zhang Xiaotian was at the same cultivation realm as him, the latter's soul would probably be as powerful as his soul before he split into two halves. It might even be higher. At this moment, a big eye in midair was staring at Han Fei, which gave Han Fei goosebumps. This thing looked like the eye of the heavenly path. Fortunately, this was not the real eye of the heavenly path. Otherwise, how could Han Fei hide? The old turtle said, among the great techniques in the world, the eye technique is one of the most mysterious. This person's eye technique can see through most of your actions. If my guess is correct, he should even be able to see through the way your demonic aura operates. Han Fei thought to himself, my yin-yang divine eyes are also good. However, he still replied, anyway, he can't tell that I'm a human. I'm a pure sea demon now. It was true that Zhang Xiaotian couldn't tell that Han Fei was a human being, but he vaguely felt that there was something wrong with Han Fei's vitality. His qi and blood were too strong and overbearing, but at this moment, the way he was bleeding from his 7 orifices did not give off the feeling that his qi and blood were vigorous. To confirm his guess, Zhang Xiaotian suddenly shouted, Fish Dragon King, take my 9 spears. Han Fei frowned. He seemed to have some impression of 9 spears. Zhang Xiaotian stretched out a finger, and a blood-colored spear materialized in the air. Han Fei was intrigued by the spear. He remembered that Zhang Xiaotian seemed to have a divine skill, 9 spears. However, there had never been a person of the same level who could make him use more than the 5th spear. It could even be said that the number of people who forced him to use his 9 spears could be counted on one hand. Han Fei's heart sank. It seemed that his acting had indeed come to an end. However, all the onlookers present exclaimed one after another. Someone exclaimed, 9 blood-colored spears. This ultimate skill is starting to appear. Someone was stunned. Is the Fish Dragon King really so strong now? Has Zhang Xiaotian been forced to use his ultimate skill, 9 blood-colored spears? Many venerables scanned him with their perception, wondering how Han Fei would deal with it. Instant. Han Fei twisted his body and secretly increased his strength by 10%, making his pure strength reach nearly 70 waves. Under normal circumstances, such a terrifying strength was already the limit of a peak-level sea spirit. Even when Han Fei was at his peak, the strongest strength of a law enforcer was only 72 waves. Therefore, this attack could not only show his great potential, but also not weak. At least, Han Fei was sure that his spear couldn't be broken by Zhang Xiaotian's spear. Otherwise, wouldn't this person be even more talented than him? Huh! Han Fei stretched out his hand, and with a faint dragon roar, the surrounding seawater trembled, and the spear was shot out. The water exploded, the space shattered, and cracks appeared. The corners of Zhang Xiaotian's mouth twitched, and 2 red lights condensed into 2 blood-colored spears on both sides of his body and darted out. Han Fei was slightly alarmed. He broke my attack with only 3 spears. This person is more talented than Yi Yuchen. Bam! 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 In other people's eyes, Han Fei's spear had shattered 2 cracks in the void. When the 3rd blood crack appeared, a huge hole appeared, and the power of both sides was annihilated at the same time. Han Fei pretended to be panting, but he didn't give up. He condensed another spear. This spear was like the drawing technique. The spear was like a knife, not a stab, but a spear light that swept out in an arc. Zhang Xiaotian was a little surprised to see this attack. He seemed to be surprised that Han Fei could perform such an attack in such a short time. Not just Zhang Xiaotian, but Prawn Yue and Green Silk Spirit also frowned. How many spears could the Fish Dragon King block? How dare he take the initiative to attack? Swish! One of Zhang Xiaotian's hands turned into a giant tentacle, which straightened and thrust out again. Chilla, in everyone's eyes, Zhang Xiaotian's spear was slowly torn apart by the power of Han Fei's spear. Huh? Zhang Xiaotian was slightly surprised. Looking at the spear light that was clashing with his spear, he said casually, "Your spear light seems to have a very powerful ability to break techniques. Have you grasped a new power?" Han Fei was shocked. His attacks had always been enhanced by the invincible will. Therefore, he was used to using armor-piercing techniques. However, Zhang Xiaotian was different. He was indeed a top heavenly talent. He would have such a feeling when his power collided with his opponent in a battle. As early as when Han Fei was still in the Blue Sea Town, when he was still using the million knife art, he could already make people feel this way. Han Fei's face turned cold. Humph. The Dragon King's bloodline is already very powerful. I've only touched the surface. One day, I'll dig out all my potential. Han Fei didn't care. No matter what problems he had, he would just blame it on the Dragon King's bloodline. As he expected, Zhang Xiaotian chuckled and blocked the terrifying blast with one hand. Looking at the domineering spear light that had broken his fourth spear, the center of his eyebrows suddenly opened. Red light glowed, and another bloody spear darted out. Someone exclaimed, "The fifth spear." It's already the fifth spear. Someone was shocked. This Fish Dragon King has forced Master Zhang Xiaotian to use the fifth spear. How terrifying! However, it was Han Fei's turn to be shocked, because he found that the opponent's attack had gathered the energy from all directions. In an instant, the power of this spear surpassed that of his spear light. With a crack, the spear light was broken. Although he instinctively wanted to attack again, the old turtle said, "Enough. If you attack again, you'll be beyond the Fish Dragon King's limit. No matter how talented he is, he can't grow so fast. It's only been half a year." Han Fei was shocked. He wanted to try again. Because Han Fei found that Zhang Xiaotian was probably a top heavenly talent on the same level as him. The power of this spear alone was comparable to the sacrificing punch. He had to use the sacrificing punch with the full strength of a peak-level law enforcer to completely block it. But this was only the fifth spear. The sixth spear, the seventh spear. He hadn't blocked all four spears, which made Han Fei want to fight Zhang Xiaotian with other strength. However, the big picture was more important. Han Fei immediately looked horrified. With a roar, he stepped back and used the close-distance technique. However, the opponent's spear was extremely fast. Even though Han Fei retreated, the spear in his hand didn't stop, and the Monkey King's 3,000 strikes smashed down. In the eyes of others, every time Han Fei attacked, blood flowed out of his arms, hands, and mouth. Phew! Someone heaved a long sigh of relief. Zhang Xiaotian is still the invincible Zhang Xiaotian. The Fish Dragon King is already so strong, but he was forced into such a state by a spear. Crack! Crack! Han Fei's skin was full of cracks, and his battle suit from his wrists to his shoulders was shattered. Both his arms were covered with blood stripes. Pooh! Han Fei spat out a mouthful of blood. He tumbled hundreds of times in the seawater before he took the blow with trembling hands. However, he didn't seem to have the strength to fight anymore. Cough, cough. Han Fei's expression was solemn, and his voice was trembling. Why, your strength has already reached the Tao-seeking state. Zhang Xiaotian didn't deny it. He put down his hands and looked at Han Fei quietly, but he still felt that something was wrong. He felt that Han Fei's qi and blood were behaving very strangely. However, he couldn't figure out what was wrong at all. Under the gaze of his third eye, the fish dragon king shouldn't be able to hide anything anymore. Was he really wrong? Zhang Xiaotian smiled and then said, "You are the fourth person to be able to take my fifth spear." Han Fei frowned and said in disbelief, "That's impossible. Why didn't I know that?" Zhang Xiaotian shrugged slightly. Guess. When Zhang Xiaotian said this, a lot of people were puzzled. Someone was puzzled. The fish dragon king is the fourth, but why do I feel that it's the first? Someone scratched his head. That's impossible. I don't think any of the top 10 heavenly talents have been able to take Zhang Xiaotian's fifth spear.